Hello, gays and theys and he's and she's and everyone in between. Welcome to Ladies' Night.
Woo! I'm Top, as you might be able to read if you're literate. I'm going to be the narrator for this.
I am the artist formerly known as Trotterhead, now Titterhead, and I have usurped the hosting role this evening because I am just so excited to glaze these fine-ass ladies.
And we are just going to hop into it right now. So have fun listening. Early onset Alzheimer's is my worst fear. The intellect diminishes to such a point that direction becomes indistinguishable. Unfamiliarity with yourself or with those cherished, deteriorating to nothing more than a mere husk of your former self. It hasn't been my worst fear, or a prominent one, my whole life. My grandparents passed away when I was young, so I never experienced that growing up. I heard stories from friends, but hearing it always sounded different from experiencing. Since living in my current home, it has become the worst one. Mr. and Mrs. Boilen are my neighbors. They live in the house next door, in a small, independent suburban home that is well loved. A trim set of hedges encompasses the perfect picket fence and driveway. Since my bedroom window is at the corner, I often daydream while looking out. It is a pleasant house to settle down in, to lay your bearings, and to build your peace. I first met Miss Boilen after a few months of living here. A small rattling on my doorknob had startled me. I was watching TV when I froze. Assuming it was a robber, I grabbed the knife after hearing a sound. A month after moving here, several home invasions occurred in the neighborhood. The perpetrator was never caught. I listened. Keys jingled, and I heard the knob turn. "Honey, the lock is stuck. Can you let me in?" Her creaking, dry voice left me puzzled. I returned the knife to the table. I had not met my neighbors, apart from friendly nods during my commute. At first, I assumed it might be someone who knew the old tenant. They didn't know I lived here. When I opened the door to break the news, I saw her. A tiny, chubby, bent senior groped for the keys held within her palm. The nightgown she wore was navy blue with white dots. Dirty brown fuzzy slippers covered her feet. It was an unusual outfit for the early afternoon. My identity caused her features to shift into a grimace. "Can I help you, ma'am?" I asked, feeling bad. Nobody had informed this poor old woman they had moved away. "Is Eddie in there?" she responded, trying to look past me. "No, sorry, ma'am. There is no Eddie here. I live here now. My name is Laura." The soft wrinkles in her coiled skin seemed to turn into a tender frown as her eyes watered. Even with the lines, time etched onto her skin like trees. She felt so young to me. A maternal instinct washed over me. She let out a soft whimper. Her eyes welled up, and I felt the sudden urge to grab her hand and caress her white curls. "I'm sorry. I don't know where I am. Where is my husband?" she sniffled. I had thought her to be so small, even smaller than she already was. A feeling of dread had washed over me and pushed me to help her, to keep her safe, to shelter her from this hurt, one she was facing all alone. Lisa, a childhood friend, had told me how her grandma wandered out of the house in her pajamas often. She had broken in a few times by mistake. Lisa's mom always thanked those who kept her mother safe during those shaky moments. Back then, I vowed I would do the same. In about 15 minutes, I made a second cup of tea. Miss Boilen sat on my couch, watching Golden Girls. The doorbell rang. I set the kettle down and opened the door. A slender, tall old man greeted me. His soft brown pants complemented his beige coat. He had a cane in one hand and a stack of small flyers on the other. "Hi, I'm looking for," he said with a croaky voice, then paused. "Oh, I don't think we met before." "No, I don't think we have. I'm Laura. I moved here recently." His face softened into a smile for a second. I could tell he thought it rude not to. "Well, nice to meet you, Laura. I'm Hank Boilen. Welcome to the neighborhood." He returned to his serious expression. "I'm sorry to bother you, but..." "Eddie? Eddie, is that you?" A voice piped up from behind me. A look of relief washed over his face while shifting his eyes to look behind me. Yes, it's me, honey. I'm here." The sound of shuffling footsteps neared me as I turned to look at the old lady, no longer on my couch. Her face displayed a toothy grin. She came to stand beside me. Thank goodness you found her, Laura. I glanced at Mr. Boilen. He seemed a bit nervous and apologetic, as if I had shouldered an enormous burden on his behalf. A moment of awkward stillness rested between us. Would you like to come inside for tea? I just made some, I suggested, trying to put him at ease. He accepted with humble thanks, and the next hour he told me their situation at length. These high school sweethearts had been together for 50 years. They built a joyful story, a little cliche even, but they embodied it with grace. Then about 3 years ago, their life got turned upside down. Evelyn had started forgetting simple things. Last night's dinner, her keys, they had dreaded her diagnosis. Early onset Alzheimer's, turning their fairy tale upside down. I pegged Mr. Boilen as a lonely man. His eyes remained fixed on his wife while he made several attempts to contact her. But she didn't understand. She kept asking about Eddie, a name he hadn't mentioned. Can I ask you a question, Mr. Boilen? I asked. Please, call me Hank, Laura. Mr. Boilen makes me feel old. A hearty laugh shook his body. Hank, then, I revised. I hope this isn't too personal, but who is this Eddie she keeps talking about? He took a pause and let a soft sigh and spoke. Not too personal at all, dear. Eddie was her son. He passed away when he was 24 in a car accident, an evident hint of sadness in his voice. I gave him a sympathetic smile, attempting to provide comfort before he continued. Sometimes I wonder why, he asked. Why, on top of all of this, she has to keep seeing him everywhere. His voice was weak and broken. His gaze rested on his wife, her eyes wide and vacant. His hand caressed hers with a soft touch, but she didn't seem to notice. I wondered whether Evelyn was completely involved in that moment. I felt sorry for them. His eyes showed clear guilt and shame. Meanwhile, his wife didn't even seem to recognize who he was. The faint memory of their dead son was the only grip on real life that her mind was holding on to. As the year progressed, my bond with Mr. and Mrs. Boilen grew stronger. He found solace in me, as I was almost the same age as his son had been before he passed. I believed I was the only person in the neighborhood who cared about them sincerely. Regardless, I made it my mission to make Hank feel as welcome as possible. When he faced tough times, such as his wife's illness or daily struggles, I welcomed him with open arms. If he didn't check in, I made sure to drop by. My own sense of loneliness drove some of it. After my 3-year relationship ended and I uprooted to a different city, I didn't have many friends. So, Mr. Boilen was my friend and I was his. Then, on the morning of the 6th of June, I received a peculiar piece of mail. I got the usual newspaper, a few subscription bills, and a small envelope addressed to me. There was no sender nor a stamp. I felt a pit form in my stomach as I pulled the paper out and saw the text. In loving memory of Hank Boilen, January 3rd, 1944 to June 1st, 2025. Loving father to Eddie and husband to Evelyn. We will miss you. Hank's immediate family will hold a memorial service. We ask for privacy during this different time. My chest knotted as I read and reread before realizing what it said. My head started spinning. He seemed fine. On June 1st, I saw him, spoke to him, laughed with him, nothing out of the ordinary. We had eaten breakfast and said our goodbyes, but not once did it occur to me that this would be the last. After a week had gone by, I started feeling alarmed. I hadn't noticed anyone stop by the Boilen house, and Evelyn couldn't take care of herself. At this point, she didn't speak anymore, or eat, or do anything by herself. Most days, Hank told me she would only sit at her chair, watching the occasional car pass by. I rang their doorbell 3 times. I tried to peek through the window, but the blinds stayed closed. At night, a loud bang woke me. I shot upright in my bed, turning to see that the clock had hit 1:27 a.m. Sleep still dwelling in my eyes, I moved to look out the window to see where the sound was coming from. It was dark out, but the lamppost allowed the right amount of light. It was Miss Boilen. She was standing on her front yard. My heart dropped at the sight of her. She looked skinny and frail. Her hunched form seemed to have progressed. Something was lying on the ground in front of her. A long, dark shape. I nudged my curtain a little farther and tried to focus my eyes. My eyes adjusted to the dark, and adrenaline surged through me, waking me. It looked like a large garbage bag. A gas left my mouth before I could realize it, as Miss Boilen seemed to hoist the bag into the garbage bin. A low, deep growl filled the air. As a wet, sloshy thud echoed through the silence, the hairs on my neck stood up. Then she stretched. A long stretch, one that allowed me to hear her joints crack and pop as she groaned, like her skin was too tight. In that moment, any resemblance to the kind old woman I knew had vanished. My knees buckled as I watched her turn to face my house. Her movement deliberate and unhurried. I pulled the curtain closed as fast as I could and planted myself down on the ground, hand covering my mouth to stifle any sound. I knew she couldn't see through the walls, but I swear I felt her eyes burn into my back. Frozen in fear, I sat there until the first beams of sunlight filled my room, gaze stuck on the door. Even though it felt crazy, I kept my eyes on it all night. I feared she would barge through at any point. There had been some changes in Evelyn's behavior before Hank's passing, one in particular. Somewhere in May, during a thundering storm, my doorbell rang. It was early evening, and I wasn't expecting visitors. To my surprise, Mr. Boilen was there. He had gotten caught in the rain. His gray hair drooped on his forehead as he looked down. There was no hello or how are you or anything of the sort. A melancholy waft drifted towards me, as if he emanated it from his breath. Then his shoulders started shaking with sobs. I pulled him inside and grabbed the nearest towel I could find. Once he had dried off, a variety of blankets enveloped him. My thermostat was now set to 77, and he told me, "I don't know what to do anymore, Laura. She's getting worse." Worse? What do you mean by that? What happened, Hank? A frown settled on his face as his eyes met mine. "She tried to attack me, Laura, with a knife." My eyes widened in shock. Never before had he shared that she was aggressive. "I came home from getting groceries. Couldn't have been more than half an hour. But she didn't recognize me at all. She kept yelling about Eddie. She said he was coming home and that she would call him right now." He paused. "This is the worst it's ever been. She pulled the knife and I ran. I ran to you. I don't know what to do anymore." Another wave of sobs filled him as I sat down next to him and rubbed his back until he finished. "Laura, God forbid. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll take care of her." His tear-filled eyes expressed a silent plea. Of course, I had promised I would, and asked him if he wanted me to come with him. He hesitated before declining. He promised he would try on his own once, not to overwhelm her. If that didn't work, he would come back. He stayed a little longer. I could feel his angst in the room pressing on him, weighing him down like a rock. As I saw him out, he promised to call if she had settled down, and asked one more thing. "Laura, if you don't hear from me tonight, there's a spare key in the mailbox." I interrupted him, saying it would be fine. I assured him I'd keep an eye on things. After that, he got a bit quieter. It wasn't enough to worry me, but I could tell something was bothering him. As irrational as it felt, there was a disturbance I couldn't seem to shake. He had been fine, now he was dead, and Miss Boilen, there was something wrong with her. Over the next 2 weeks, I started observing her. And the longer I did, the behaviors were unlike her character. She no longer wandered out of the house, rarely did she leave the house at all. Blinds and windows stayed closed, and during most of the day, the house was quiet. If a stranger passed by, the home would likely seem vacant. But I knew it wasn't. I was watching every move. At night, Miss Boilen would go out, usually around 1 or 2 a.m. She stepped out of the front door, still hunched over. She kept shrieking, and now almost none of her clothes fit right. Then she'd look left, right, and if nobody was around, she'd stretch, with pops, cracks, and an unsettling simplicity. That was her routine. Go outside, stretch, and go back in. This saga continued until one night she didn't show up outside. I waited until the clock rolled around to 2, even 3 a.m. Nothing. My eyes fought the drowsiness for a little longer until I gave up around 3:30. As I was about to turn away, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I swung the curtain open and saw a light emanating from the house. It was coming from what I presumed to be the living room, the only light I had seen in 4 weeks. Dim and yellow. Miss Boilen stood by the window, her face half hidden behind the lace curtain. She wore the usual nightgown draped over her frame. It looked like she was speaking to someone. I squinted. Her mouth was moving in quick, deliberate jabs. Though I couldn't make sense of what she was saying, no sound drifted through the air. She stepped aside, and for a brief moment I saw another figure. It looked like a man. Miss Boilen lifted her finger. The light was out in the next blink. An eerie darkness had returned. My skin went cold. I waited for her to return, for any other sign of life. None came. A pump of adrenaline filled my body, coursing through my veins. Memories of Hank flooded my brain, and his echoing voice had haunted me too long. Feelings of guilt flooded tears down my cheek. I spotted the envelope from June 1st. The meth lay in the corner of my dining table. Hank's funeral note lay next to it. It dawned on me. There hadn't been a sender or a stamp. Come to think of it, my address wasn't even listed on it. Most daunting of all was the fact that it seemed handwritten. The jagged edges and the cursive writings. That tipped the bucket. I now knew I wasn't crazy or imagining things. Whatever was going on with her, that house, or Hank, something very disturbing was taking place. As 1:30 a.m. arrived, I found myself frozen before the window, gazing at the front door of the Boilen's house with unwavering focus. On the dot, creaked open, and Evelyn stepped out. Hunched over, shuffling to the front lawn, I let out an audible sigh, a mixture of excitement and fear. One look to the left, one to the right, and the familiar popping and cracking as Miss Boilen stretched. She settled back into her crooked form and crept back inside. To ensure any amount of safety I could, I waited for another hour until I made my way outside. The caffeine was coursing through my veins, causing my heart to beat in an irregular pattern. I must have downed at least 5 cups of coffee to stay awake. The air felt heavy and dreadful, and I sensed it to be some false form of empathy. It seemed to know what lay ahead was terrible. It warned me, turn back. You don't want to see this. Please believe me. The cold metallic key rested exactly where I thought it was, where Hank described it to be. A silent defiance to the madness his wife had transformed into. A prayer for safety in the form of my protection. I'm sorry I failed you, Hank. Lock and knob turned with a silenced click, one I made sure of. I'd never visited the Boilen house completely, only the doorstep or the front of the window to wave hello to Evelyn as Hank and I walked our usual route. Down the street, through the park, and looping back. I shut the door behind me in the quietest manner I could. My nose wrinkled and my lip curled as a scent hit me. Rotten and foul stench filled the air, the humid freshness of a butcher's shop mixed with it. The closed blinds and windows choked out to the faint streetlights. It felt like an odd, warm welcome after my long-awaited arrival. It took a moment to adjust my eyes to the dark. I began to differentiate the details of the house. To my right was a kitchen. It had mustard yellow wallpaper and dark blue tiles above the furnace. The faint humming of a refrigerator was present. A set of stairs towered before me, evoking a sense of doom. They seemed never-ending and kissed by the touch of the night. It took twice as long for me to register them. Then, on my left, a living room showed. A shape contained the reading nook Hank always talked about, accompanied by the soft blue velvet chair that Evelyn always sat in. Tears formed in my ducts, remembering the occasional smile and wave Miss Boilen had given as Hank and I passed by. It was rare and faded with time, but sometimes she seemed to recognize us, or at least our comfort and safety. It seemed to bring Hank joy, those fleeting moments, but anxiety still plagued him. A tear rolled down my cheek. From behind the chair, a rustle sounded. Fear replaced my sadness as I shifted around, feeling urgency. I squinted my eyes at a boxy wooden shape that stood where I thought the dining table should be. As the shape with its narrow base and wide top became clearer, my lungs felt tighter between my ribs. Dark brown oak and crude, stumpy edges. A final resting place. A coffin. I felt a skip in my heart as I tread closer. Each step tightened, my jaw shut as cold sweat started forming on my spine, almost trickling down. The rugged wood showed signs of natural wear. A black-brown grain sprinkled like sawdust over it, like it had been dug up recently from the ground. What annoyed me was how someone hammered the planks together in a crooked way. It seemed handmade. Almost standing toe-to-toe with it now, I stretched a trembling hand towards the side. Fingers finding the edges and trailing along, trying to discover a way to open it. I found it in a small crevice where my index finger fit like a glove. Before I knew it, I had pushed the lid aside, eyes widening at the revolting contents. Inside was a body. The gray, cool color radiated with an intensity that strained my eyes. The smothering smell of rot filled my nostrils, forcing me to keep down the rush of bile. It pricked my eyes, causing them to water. I pulled my shirt fabric over my nose to block the smell. Then I noticed more details. It was clear that during the period this person had been lifeless, time hadn't been kind to them. Unique features of a face had faded because of bugs and natural fermentation, revealing sections of skull underneath. The person was small and dressed in an oversized, presumably light blue and gray outfit, a vintage pair of dress pants and a shirt. Around the stomach was a large and dark stain. The blazer had a large width, but it was short, and it seemed to have some initials on the sleeve. As I scanned further down, it seemed like a book rested between their hands. Their long, narrow fingers had skin peeling down the digits. Against my better judgment, I grasped the book with a tug. I heard the soft crunch of bones and something metallic dropped. I managed to whisk it away. Even though dust covered it almost completely, I could still make out enough of the cover title, and a gasp slipped between my lips. Evelyn and Eddie. I felt an intense wave of sadness cradle me, mixed with an immense amount of fear. This was Eddie, the lifeless, decayed body of Evelyn's darling Eddie. I felt disturbed by the decomposed man, but I also felt sorry for Evelyn. In that moment, the last sliver of hope I had prayed for this to stem from her Alzheimer's. For the envelope to be hers in a daze, having slipped through my mail slot. The loss of her husband and son left her in a state of deep disturbance. To cope, she held on to whatever family she had left. The reason Hank was gone. Her illness was the root of all of this. A sensory reaction revealed this wasn't the case. The hopeful sliver disintegrated immediately. The source of decomposition and foul rot I smelled was resting right next to me, which made the humid freshness of blood creeping down the stairs stand out all the more. If Eddie were down here, could Hank be up there? With the book under my arm, I ascended the towering stairs. The only sound was the thudding pulse in my ears. With each step, the humidity grew thicker in my lungs. It felt heavy, making it hard to breathe and leaving a bitter, metallic taste on my tongue. I pressed on until I reached the top. On the right was a long and narrow hallway. The light determined that a floral green wallpaper clad the walls. Examining further, a door at the end was standing ajar. A faint strip of light spilled through the gap. As soon as I realized what it meant, another rustle came from behind the door, and I heard a toilet flush. Without hesitation, I slipped into the nearest room my hand was in reach of, closing the door immediately behind me in the quietest manner I could. It was so large and dark I couldn't orient myself. Frozen in fear, I listened for the sound of anyone and heard the faint shuffling of footsteps. Feeling an increasing sense of urgency, I placed my hands on the wall next door to ground myself. I figured a closet would be somewhere in the room, and that would be my best bet to stay hidden. The footsteps were growing more powerful by the second as I tried to steady my breathing, focusing only on the chilly wall inside my hands. The footsteps were almost in front of the door of the room when I felt the sudden outline of a closet. I cracked it open and slipped inside, holding my breath. I pressed my back against the far wall and closed the door as I heard someone turn the knob. I took shallow breaths as light from the hall spilled into the room, revealing a bed in the center. Shit! Another thud and click of a doorknob echoed as the footsteps shuffled inside. I pressed myself against the wall as they came closer. They stopped right in front of my hiding spot. My knees were mere inches away as I bundled up to make myself as small as possible. Sweat pricked my back as my body stayed rigid. Instead of the closet door swinging open, I heard the footsteps move away. I waited until they were somewhere deep in the room before I let out a controlled, long breath. The room started spinning, and I could tell the stress had taken a toll on my body. The sudden slam of a door startled me awake. Pain shot through the back of my head as it bumped against the wall. Ow! I let out a quiet sound before realizing where I was sitting. My eyes were heavy, and I struggled to stay awake. I forced them wide open until they burnt in an attempt not to pass out again. How long was I out for? My eyes adjusted to the ill-lit space I sat in. It was still dark, but not as dark as it had been, allowing me to see more of where I was. From above, an array of hangers balanced itself on a metal pole. Several menswear pieces hung above me, tickling my face. I shifted and turned my head upwards to stop them from brushing my nose. Behind the first row, a second variety of male clothes hung, from dress shirts to t-shirts and blazers. I furrowed my brow as something looked off and familiar about them. They had an oversized width, but were short. It looked vintage and square, old-fashioned, different from Hank's usual attire. A dusty wave of aftershave, sweet and old-fashioned, rose from them. A faint, cloying cologne I couldn't place. Leaning up to investigate the smell, my knee shifted on something that crunched. I picked up an old-fashioned pair of thick glasses, the kind my grandfather used to wear. It seemed that two initials stood on the arm, but in the shadows, the letters remained indistinct to me. Trying to read them, something blurry and distant on the ground caught my eye. I noticed a scattered photograph. Next to the album I had found earlier, it showed a young couple smiling at the camera. I examined the photo with great attention and saw Evelyn radiant and happy. She leaned against a man whose features seemed off. The man's jaw had a sharper angle, and his eyes had a different shape compared to Hank's. Maybe he had changed a lot over the years. Then, the flickering of a light filled my peripheral vision. I jerked my head to the source. I noticed soft flickers shining through the narrow slits of the panel door. I lingered and peeped between the gaps. There was a candle. Shifting to sit on my knees, the eerie sight came more into view. In the middle of the room, as I had seen before, there was a bed. There was a person lying down in it, dressed in a long, dark tuxedo. I recognized him by his familiar brown shoes. The urge to vomit came back to my throat. He had his hands clasped together on top of his stomach. Waterfalls of tears streamed down my cheeks as I opened the door with soft sobs. Hank, oh God. Moving up the wardrobe, I could see him in full glory. A candle rested on the nightstand next to the bed. The light flickered in a steady rhythm. My vision was getting blurry, and I moved over to stand to the left of the bed. Sobs continued racking through my body as I examined the way he now looked. He was staring at the ceiling, eyes vacant, filled with an intensity and focus. His mouth opened as if he were about to speak or scream. How scared he must have been. Worst of all was a disgusting, slimy goop that coated him. A shade of brownish red covered his face, hands, and bare feet completely. It reeked of a bitter, metallic smell and radiated a warmth I had sensed all throughout the house. Some kind of mist had clung to him. Even though he looked unharmed, his body was perfectly preserved, quiet and statuesque. Hank was my neighbor, my friend, and Evelyn. He appeared to be nothing, a piece of junk gone were 50 years of marriage. A wave of rage erupted inside, overpowering my sharp grief and sadness. As my breath grew heavier and angrier, I knew I had to do something. She couldn't get away with this. She was sick in the head, and in the last act of grace towards Hank, I would make sure she'd rot. In an institution, prison, or 6 feet under, I didn't care which one. Determined to put an end to all this, I took one last glance at Hank's still lifeless body. Then I turned up towards the door. My mind was still racing with ideas of what I would do to her as I shifted my gaze to look up. With a shake, my hand recoiled from moving to grasp the nod. The sight of the door stopped me dead in my tracks. Or rather, what was hanging on it. I felt all the color drain from my body as I stood frozen in shock, unable to move. On the door, on a clothes hanger, was a suit. Not a tuxedo or anything close in resemblance to an item of clothing. It was Evelyn. She was a mere husk. My stomach turned as I struggled to keep my balance. The suit was crafted from her skin. It looked deflated like an empty balloon, appearing leathery and pink. Someone stitched it together amateurishly. Next to the body was a steamer that burrowed a mist of blood towards my nose. The cord hung in a relaxed manner from the outlet. I looked at Evelyn, the wrinkled and saggy outline of her form. I noticed every detail. Droplets of water trickled down in a continuous flow. The hairs on her body, the moles that touched her skin, everything. In the middle of her body was a large zipper that ran from her groin and ended right between her collarbones. Above the torso was a mask that was deflated. Made of her hollowed-out face, spaces where her eyes, lips, and nose once stood were now empty holes. She looked like one of those cheap and ugly Halloween masks. The gaps had red stains and brown and burgundy hues. I noticed the slimy goop coating the inside. My head spun, and my breath caught as the pieces fell into place. The title on the cover, Evelyn and Eddie, and the photo of the couple that had caught my eye. Could it be? My stomach twisted. I noticed the night stretching, the handwritten envelope, and the vintage clothes. Hank had never worn those before. They looked big, and someone had spruced them. The air felt heavy. The glasses, the same kind my grandfather used to wear, heavy, round, with arms in the shadows bearing initials that I hadn't quite been able to make out. A chill rolled down my spine. Initials, the same one from the coffin, E.B. Eddie Boilen. Everything I thought I knew about Hank, from his laughter, our talks, to those quiet times, they now seemed meaningless, making room for a feeling of betrayal. Before I could move, I heard a heavy shift on the bed behind me, deliberate and slow. My heart raced with increased intensity. What followed was the sound of a breath blowing out the candle.
I'm sure we're all dying to know, when did you begin your writing career and why?
Well, I actually started back in early middle school. No, I started in middle school. I wrote an amateur horror book back then. I was like 8, 9. It was really bad, and I don't have it anymore, so that's kind of sad. But I've always written sporadically, like throughout my life. But in the last few years, I couldn't like make the time for it. And with my discovery of Creepcast and then the subreddit and the writer's room, I decided I would give it another go. So, oh, and I also just love using it as like an outlet for my sense of imagination.
Well, I'm sure that I speak for everyone when I say we are so glad that you decided to pick it back up again.
Yeah, just very good work from what I'm seeing here. Just amazing.
Stop! Oh my god.
And so what does your writing process look like? How has it changed over the course of however long you want to consider your process?
Well, when I was younger, I think I read like so many like horror kids like thriller books, but I don't even remember what I wrote back then. Probably is something with a lot of grammatical errors. But right now I'm keeping a list in my notes app And like every time I see something like on TV, on TikTok, on like somewhere out and about, I just write it down if I have like an idea, and then I just think about a cool idea, think about all the details, and then I just start writing a summary and go from there.
So as you were sort of collecting these ideas in your day-to-day, is there one in particular that inspired this piece?
Well, Jade sent me a message for the fact that I was like invited to write something for this or to highlight one of my stories. So I was already thinking about writing something about Alzheimer's because it really is my worst fear. Like I can't even imagine something worse, maybe ALS, but
It's a gnarly one.
Me. Yeah. It's also a realistic fear, so that makes it worse. But I knew I wanted to write something about that because I haven't read something like that around like No Sleep or Creepcast subreddit. But I figured I'd write it with a female protagonist and a female antagonist, or like somewhat female antagonist. And then I wanted some kind of twist, and that was inspired by JL's story that scared me so bad. The twist with Craig and him being like something, it scared me. So I figured I could try to throw the reader off all throughout until like the last few passages.
I think you did a great job of that. It was
even looking back at the story, I'm noticing that Hank said Eddie was her son and not ours.
Yep.
And it's just wow. Just you did a very good job at like setting up this story. It's really a phenomenal piece of work. I gotta everybody upvote it right now, please. Give it an upvote.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So why the attraction to horror? What is it about horror that gets you?
Well, we'd have to go way back into my early like childhood. I've always been into horror. I don't know what started it, but I've always read like Goosebumps. I've read like every kind of Dutch horror book I could find in my school's library. I've read from then I've read all kinds of horror books. It's just the genre that has always pulled me in the most. Also with movies, games, like everything horror. I just love that. And I also think it takes like a special skill for people to be able to dabble in something that makes other people generally uncomfortable. And I also love that aspect of it because it's not for everybody. And it takes some really sick in the head people, and I love that, to write and read like horror stuff and be like okay with it. So I just like delving into that.
It's a slay.
It's a slay.
It's a slay. So I have one last question for you, Noah. This question I added particularly for the ladies. I've said many times before that women have a very unique relationship with horror. Our bodies and our lives are just sort of full of it every day in a way that I'm not sure that people of other gender persuasions can really appreciate. We're literally biologically coded to feel pain and have an intense response to fear. And I think it says something that a lot of the women in chat were saying, that Alzheimer's is one of their biggest fears. It's like this constant battle that we have with our own bodies and minds just as women. So as a woman, what makes you angry and how does that influence your work?
Girl, so many things like femicide, inequality, sexism, stupid ignorant men, stupid ignorant women. I could go on for days about that. I also know that horror is a very male-dominated genre, and I love to see that here in the writer's room there are a lot of women here, and everybody else, like other genders, are also amazing towards women. So I love seeing that, but I think it's very important that female writers get equal visibility and that they aren't like subconsciously seen as too innocent to write horror or like unbelievable or something like that. So that keeps me going in trying to keep writing and keep it up.
Noah, I sincerely hope you do, and I speak for all of us again when I say we all really hope you do and are so excited to see what you pump out next. Chat, please spam chat for Noah.
Upvote the story. Spam some crowns. Spam some nails. Spam some fire.
Some coffins.
Make sure that everybody, keep going.
Some grandma emojis.
Yep. You know what? Spam some coffins. Spam some stretching. Spam some yoga. Yep. You know, we got this. You know, Noah, that was absolutely wonderful. I'm very glad that was the first story we read. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for writing that.
So good, Top. I can't even begin to express, like, you did so good. I couldn't have asked for a better narration. You did amazing.
I could only do as good as the story. Your story was amazing. I'm very glad to be able to narrate it. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Thunderstorms yielded a surprising amount of rain, slowing the immediate progression of the wildfire to a dull advance. It sulked through the understory as if it were pouting, greedily gobbling dead grass but hesitant to touch the heavier fuels. It was biding its time and snatching chance like a spoiled child on Halloween. You know which child. The bratty one that ignores the sign that pleads, "Please take one," only to be terrified when the homeowner bursts from their stage hiding spot. In a similar fashion, fire crews were plotting their strike against the fire, but one could argue whether they were the child or the homeowner. Hoses were laid, lines were dug, and boots hit the ground to best the fire. The plan was to let it burn, but to keep it contained and controlled. In the darkness of the night, ponderosas stood indifferently. The fire lapped at their roots, and it was consuming the surrounding litter. Perhaps it was arrogant to say we outsmarted it, and perhaps it was even worse to afford any sentience to a flame, but it certainly felt like the fire had been duped. We watched it gorge on the meager forest understory, only to hit dry, sandy dirt and die, trailing wisps of smoke in bitter protests and smoldering in forgotten wood. We were assigned to a night ops, a position with some degree of greater hazard. We've all fumbled in the darkness of a known restroom at 3 a.m. at least once in our lives. Now imagine that bewilderment with the world burning down around you in a place you've only seen in hasty passing. Watch out for the country not seen in daylight, we practiced. Suffice to say, night ops came with obvious risk, but were typically less extensive than normal business hours. We were there to watch the fire crawl through the night. Specifically, we provided medical support to the skeleton crew that prevented the fire from getting too rowdy in its weakest hours. It was a straightforward assignment. Not that we underestimated the potential of the fire, but we laughed at ourselves when the most exciting thing we saw was a single tree fully engulfed in flames. I'd once seen a fire melt an entire highway of cars with people still inside. Comparing this fire to the car melting fire was comparing apples to oranges. Not to say people roasting was a good thing, but you'd invest a lot more energy into that than a solitary tree. The fire was working its way southwest through a surprisingly lush forest desert, and we parked the ambulance along its western flank. It churned beside us against the road. Smoke rolled in and out in varying intensities, and at its thickest, we moved our rig when we couldn't see more than a few feet in front of the ambulance, or when our eyes burned, or when the drifting embers looked particularly frequent and extra spicy. And we waited. Occasionally, the radio would buzz to life, but the traffic was never more than status. So we waited more. At least a bored medic meant that all the souls were safe, and the blaze was respectably beautiful in its ominous course through the witching hours. But as a whole, fires are mourned. We grieve the separation and loss they invoke, the forced unfamiliarity. But there's beauty in wildfire if you look, and despite the outwardly destructive appearance, ambience follows. Like new life enters the world, bloodied, screaming, and scantily covered in shit. So too are fires, just as messy in the process of creation. Should be remembered, however, that wicked things waste to feast on the tender flesh of any opportunity, stalking gravid chance in times of great labor. It was some time prior to midnight. My partner was stretched out in the back of the ambulance while I was watching the stars flicker in a break through the smoke. I caught a spot fire across the line sometime earlier and took care of the problem, alerting division and continuing course. Wasn't much of a threat, just something to do and something worth noticing. My stargazing and vigilance came to an abrupt halt when a veil of acrid smoke obscured everything in front of the rig. Behind the rig, the smoke churned into thinner patches and glowed a warm orange between the silhouettes of spindly conifers. The silence of the night broke with a harrowing crash. Realistically, I supposed it was a tree succumbing to the doings of fire and gravity, but in my mind it sounded like a sickening splinter of bone against force, a wet, agonizing separation of marrow and calcium. The noise was alarming and only worsened by the subsequent sound of an elk screaming. Shivers rolled through me. I had seen plenty of elk in the days I had been here, but the creatures hadn't made a single sound until tonight. An elk's bulge is a haunting sound, of course, it is. I knew what they sounded like, but this was just different. The piercing sound came from behind us in the distance, and coupled with the snapping of whole trees, it spurred a sense of dread and desperation. Ever the logical person, I thought of the elk trotting through the blaze, lost from its companions and calling for them in a panic, its nostrils flaring as fire licked its heels. I stepped out of the ambulance to listen to the animal, my eyes watering in the thick smoke. I listened for a moment before I opened the side door to the back of the ambulance. "Was that an elk?" my partner Bobby chirped. "Yeah, and a snag fell. That was the thud," I replied. The elk called again. This time, the solemn note came from within the thickest smoke in front of us. Yes, it was a lost elk calling for its kin. It had to be. It wasn't anything extraordinarily ominous. At least, no more ominous than the thought of a living creature burning alive. Another loud crack snapped in the distance, diverting my straining gaze leftward. Faster than I could redirect my attention again, there was a heinous growl mixed with a coarse hiss to my immediate right. Its voice was as dry as the landscape, as if its vocal cords had long since desiccated to fibrous sinew and now flapped on a dusty corpse breath. Something large shambled in the night as it rushed towards me. Blinded, I could only hear its limbs scuttle and flail across the ground, scattering gravel in its wake. It sounded almost clumsy, driven by reckless vitriol. Its body toppled over itself as it lurched forward blindly, crashing and thudding against the earth, its leathery tongue whispering foreign curses full of malice. All the while, it remained concealed in smoke and darkness. "Oh my God!" I screamed, and I fell backwards. It had parked the rig on the shoulder of the road, causing the passenger side to dip downwards. I launched myself in the only feasible direction of escape, up and into the open ambulance door. In the middle of my back struck the steps leading into the ambulance. I threw my arms back to leverage my weight up, fighting gravity, and kicked my feet wildly into the abyss to deter whatever approached me. I wanted to fight, to sink my heel into its rotten face if it was going to get me, make it regret coming after me, but the urge succumbed when I thought of my partner. Not only would he have to watch me be forcibly dragged by my feet into the burning hellscape beside us, but he'd be alone to defend himself, and I didn't want to put the poor kid through that. So I drove my last frantic kick into the ground and pushed with my legs until I pulled myself into the ambulance, jumped to my feet, and reached out into the blackness to slam the door shut. I breathed only after the reassuring click of the lock slid into place, sealing us safely inside. "What the fuck was that?" he shrieked. "I don't know. Did you hear it? It didn't sound right." I cut him off to fumble with my flashlight. Bright white light filled the box. I pointed the beam out the door window, but the light hit the glass pane and reflected my face back. I nearly screamed again when I was met with my terrified expression staring back at me. "I can't see shit. It's either my dumb reflection or smoke, I sneered. My partner was silent for a moment before he whispered, Skinwalker. A pregnant pause followed when he finally whimpered, I thought you were gonna die. It has to be some sort of pissed off critter. It had to be, I assured, although who I was assuring remained up for debate. We paced the back of the ambulance trying to figure out what we wanted to do next. I was terrified, but I couldn't believe it was anything as impossible as a skinwalker. Monsters were only myths born from boredom and isolation in days long gone. I mustered my courage and cautiously stepped back outside. I winced as my feet crunched on the gravel below me, and I scanned the smoke. Despite how stupid it all sounded, I was still scared. There were no shapes moving in the haze, only the sound of crackling fire could be heard. Quickly, I ran to the front passenger seat, and my partner did the same to the driver's seat, locking the doors behind us. Let's move. We'll radio division our new coordinates when we get the fuck out of here. Bobby slammed his keys into the ignition. Wait, I commanded. What if there's something in the beams ahead of us? Are we ready for that? Stop! He groaned in terror, pausing for what felt like an eternity as he contemplated my question and what he wanted to do next. I could feel my heart pounding. Reluctantly, he rolled the key forward, illuminating the haze with a click, and for a fleeting moment, I could see a lanky elf disappearing into the border of sight and obscurity. It's just an elk, I spoke hesitantly, ignoring that the shape and size of the animal wasn't quite right, but hoping it was only the illusion of darkness on its silhouette. Bobby stared nervously at the glow plug light, wait to start, so that he could spur the engine to life. But before that moment could come, the radio and dash screamed, our lights and sirens whirled, and the window rolled down and up and down again. Static blasted through the mic and we flinched to cover our ears. The dash and interior lights pulsed as if they were surging with electricity, and the radio morphed into a cacophony of screaming and sobbing, 1,000 voices wailing in torment over an unknown frequency. And abruptly as it started, the radio cut short, and the lights were shut off, sirens severed into silence. We were plunged into the black of night once again. Bobby forced the key forward again, but no reaction came from the rig. It was dead. I grabbed the handheld radio. Communications, Ambulance 13 on Command 9. As I spoke, I realized it also wasn't responding, despite being powered by a separate power source. I twisted the knob to restart it with no change. We were cut off, completely, from everything. I passed a nervous glance to my partner before my lungs began to sting with heavy smoke that poured through the open windows, filling the cab and ultimately my chest with soot. Listen, I spoke quietly. Crawl into the box. I gestured to the narrow passage between us that connected the cab to the ambulance box where the gurney rested. Lock the cab doors. I'm gonna get a Polanski and a flare from the side compartment. Open the back when I knock. Bobby stared back at me in silence. He didn't yet react. I'll knock 4 times. That way you know it's me. He was obviously torn between wanting to protect my reckless idea and protecting himself. I was relieved to see him reluctantly accept the latter option. Hey, I added, if anything happens to me, save yourself. I mean that. Bobby solemnly nodded back. Securing my headlamp, I stepped out into the smoke once again, trying to quietly open and close the rig door. I walked cautiously around the front of the ambulance, eyes straining in the smoke as it slowly churned around me. The forest cracked with embers in every direction. The compartment behind the driver's side door was always stiff to open, but thankfully it opened with little resistance this time. I rifled through the road kit for a phosphorus flare, checking the cap before shoving it into my pocket and grabbing the Polanski. I pulled the protective cover from the sharpened edge, briefly sliding my finger over the axe side of the tool to reassure myself of its potential brutality. What the fuck was that? Bobby hissed. I spun around to scold him for following me, but he wasn't there. My confusion was quickly replaced with panic, however, when my feet were pulled out from under me and I was dragged furiously down the road into the night and fire. Bobby heard the muffled scream of his partner, followed by a scuffle. He jumped to his feet and looked towards the cab, eventually creeping forward to peer more carefully through the windshield and pass a glance through the open windows beside him. He couldn't see her, nor could he hear anything that indicated she was anywhere nearby. He heard her warning echo in his mind, "Save yourself," and chewed on the possibilities. Emboldened by poorly considered courage, he erupted to his feet, running to the rear of the ambulance. He forced the lock latch open and wrapped his fingers under the handle. His newfound bravery quickly dwindled as he contemplated what could await on the other side of the door. As he pulled the handle, a stout knock interrupted him on the side door. 2 more knocks followed. "Bobby," the familiar voice called. "It's just an elk," she assured. Bobby's voice visibly relaxed to hear her voice. He stumbled over the gurney, scuffling to approach the door. There was a light scraping on the outside of the rig, and he assumed it was his partner struggling to open the locked door. When he reached for the lock, he remembered her clearly stating, "I'll knock 4 times." Bobby's mind raced and his heart followed suit, frantically considering what was actually standing outside the door if it wasn't his partner. "It's just an elk." He replayed its perfect mimicry in his mind. "Hey, you said you'd knock on the back door," he spoke sheepishly. "I can't see shit," the voice retorted defensively. He was frustrated and afraid simultaneously. Maybe she really couldn't see where she was. He approached the side window cautiously and with quiet steps, hoping to see her glaring through the window in disapproval and pawing at the door, eager to scold his paranoia. But there was nothing. Just smoky darkness. How many times did you say you'd knock?" Silence followed. Bobby stewed in quiet terror, sure he caught the truth he needed to hear from this imposter. 4 times, the voice finally spoke at the back door. It is not her familiar voice, but a wicked whisper beneath a sinister drone. Bobby's head whipped backwards as he scrambled to reach the door. Gracelessly, he flew over from the gurney, bashing his knee into the headframe and fumbled to engage the locking mechanism. On the other side, he could hear the thing shuffle and struggle with the door. Its fingers, if it had fingers, pulled on the door and met only with the sureness of the lock. It let out a monstrous screech before slamming its body into the rig once, twice, 3 times, and with a cracked window, and finally a 4th with the greatest force and frustration. Bobby scuttled up the gurney as he saw its figure loom in through the window. "Oh my God!" it wailed in her terrified voice once again. "Oh my God, my God, oh my God!" Each time it cursed, its voice ran over itself until the sound morphed into an inhuman moan. It finally hissed and pushed away from the ambulance, galloping on broken, noisy joints. Bobby could hear the slapping of its naked flesh racing into the night beyond. He whimpered. He panted. Dragged by my ankle, the distance felt endless as I was racked mercilessly across the ground. My Nomex yellow shirt had been pulled free, exposing my back and belly. Rocks and sticks tore hole in my pants and bit at every inch of bare skin that they could. My spine scraped across basalt, erupting in violent red, and quickly staunched with dust and darkness. But just as quickly as I questioned how long I could endure the onslaught, I was abruptly dropped into a small clearing. I had only a second to loathe the experience before I rolled to my knees to feasibly confront my attacker. "What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that?" the sinister voice chanted, its cadence increasing in malicious excitement. I could see crawling in the smoke, lurking behind thick blackened trees. "It's just an elk," it spoke in my voice. Struggling to my feet, I felt my heart hammer. The sudden switch from ground to feet after such an adrenaline dump and the searing pain in my body, coupled with the absolute madness I was enduring, left me quickly spent, and I felt my vision speckle as I nearly lost consciousness. Succumbing to involuntary sleep in this moment was surely a death sentence, so I pushed myself up and marched in place, forcing blood through my battered body. The thing in the trees had been eyeing me keenly, but it lolled its head acutely towards me and perked its body into a more hostile stance as I strained to remain upright. Perhaps it feared it was losing an easy meal. Perhaps it didn't like that I had any semblance of fight in me, even if just a little. Beside us both, the previously melodramatic fire sprung to life as a Perdosia torched, erupting hot flames and devouring the understory canopy. My pupils dilated in the new light. and the smoke cleared as the fire burned more completely. The fire jumped from crown to crown for a fleeting second, and I looked at the monster, unsure what terrified me more. This land was no stranger to fire, but I had underestimated its familiarity to spirits. Its blackened red skin resembled that of a burnt body, taut over cooked muscle with pale yellow blisters and patches less warped by heat. It was vaguely human, yet it crawled on its hands and feet with a ferocious and unexpected speed. All human resemblance vanished at its head, however. Despite its skeletal human face, its jaw moved independently while its tongue wriggled wildly and unrestrained. An insect? An elk? A monster? It puffed its emaciated chest out as it lurched forward, growling with spite, only to be interrupted by a freshly reignite snag that came abruptly crashing down on it. I took the opportunity to run, both from the monster and the fire. It howled behind me, and I didn't bother to look back at its fate, hoping it was as mortal to the forces of nature as I was. Fire loomed around me. It wasn't a flurry of unstoppable flames, but it clearly hovered, a quiet threat, and seared my skin. I could hear elks circling me, uncharacteristic to how they normally acted. How many of these creatures were there? Their mimic bulges turned to human cries, tuned to a noise unique to whatever pursued me. As they closed in, ready to welcome me to whatever horrific fate they had planned, their cries and pursuit ceased unexpectedly as I stumbled onto the dusty gravel road beside the ambulance. I didn't hesitate to run to the rig, tripping and falling to my knees once more. "Open the fucking door!" I screamed at Bobby. "No!" he screamed back. I could see the ambulance shake as he obviously ran to the far side of the ambulance. Rage and terror overtook me before I remembered. "You fucking obedient bastard!" and smacked my knuckles across the rear 4 times. "Let me in, Bobby, or I swear to God I'll make you regret being partnered with me." Silence followed hesitation, but the door eventually opened just enough for Bobby's fearful face to peek through. Crushing fear still radiated through me, but for a fleeting second I cracked a smile at my partner. I hugged him as soon as he was fully exposed, and we were safely stowed, wincing as I moved. "You look like shit," he spoke flatly. "What is out there?" "I don't know. I don't care. We have to find a way out." I spoke on quick breaths, acutely aware of how much I hurt. "Have you tried to start the rig?" Bobby shook his head no, then moved to the front through the passage. He tried to look discreet against the open window beside him. There was no change from the rig when he turned the key. "Didn't you say we have a portable jumper?" "Yeah, it's in the engineer's compartment," he whispered with a frown. Let's go out together this time, and then we'll Rochambeau for who stays out and jumps it. Right? On 3. Bobby nodded. 1, she spoke, anticipation dripping from her voice. 2, they spoke together. 3, and the pair burst out. Bobby burst through the driver's door, and I ran from the side. By the time I reached the driver's side, Bobby had the jumper battery out and was carrying it to the front. Without words, we readied our hands. I ultimately brandished a rock, and Bobby's the scissors. He groaned in defeat, but fair's fair. I ran to the front and pulled the lever to release the hood. Bobby made quick work of the cables, declaring, "Try now," too quickly. To our collective relief, the engine turned, but to our dismay, it did not fully start. It would need a moment longer on the jumper. The second attempt, following an unnaturally slow and equally dreadful moment's time, yielded success and stirred haste between us. Bobby slammed the hood shut while I revved the engine, flinching lightly as the exhaust pushed dust and smoke from the side mirror. Bobby reached for the passenger door when a sharp pain stung through my left shoulder. I hadn't even time to process the burning I felt when I realized one of those monstrosities had shoved its horrific frame through the driver's window and grabbed hold of my body, its individual mandibles wrapping securely around my shoulder and arm like vice clamps. My body tensed and a wave of pain pulsed through me as sore muscles sprang to weakened life. I passed a pleading glance at Bobby when the creature pulled its head out the window with me, clumsily and forcefully following. Its jaws twitched as it dragged me like a rag doll. I hit the ground outside the window. The monster released me, stepping back to screech at me while I fought to stay awake. My eyes rolled in my head and the world spun. An overwhelming amalgamation of sensations flooded my senses. The earth was cold and sharp. The air stung and smelt of ash and iron. My vision came to focus, revealing the Pulaski I dropped earlier. The first time I was dragged off to my doom. I shakily reached for the hilt of the tool, digging its iron head into the earth so I could use the length of it to support myself as I stood and groped in my pocket for the flare I had stashed earlier. In response to my movement, the monster threw itself at me. I fell backwards with the creature on top of me, but in one swift motion, I dragged the ignition end of the flare across the rough ground. Red, chemical light filled the night, and fluorescent sparks shot around us. Its long head shot forward like a viper at my throat, but I shoved the flare into its black eye before it could fully strike. Its eyes looked like mummified sockets in the darkness. I wasn't expecting the resistance of wet, gelatinous meat as I plunged the stick into it. Rancid sludge poured from the black pool of its former eye. It screamed. I couldn't tell if it was pain or anger or surprise or some combination of everything. It slashed recklessly into the air, snagging the flesh on my left forearm. Ripples of subconscious fat glistened in the artificial light before flooding with vivid red. I didn't care. I had to kill it now or die trying. So as it reeled in disgust at my attack, I mustered the last of my strength and lifted the Pulaski so that the axe end faced my threat and swung it with the last of my willpower. Thwack. It was a distinctive sound. Joints make a similar noise as they jerk in or out of place, but there was a hollow resonance in the wetness of this sound that rendered it unmistakable. It was satisfying. It was horrifying. It was the sound of metal splitting skull and splattering gray matter. In an almost immediate reaction, the creature convulsed. It fell on top of me, body spasming without a command and jaws shivering with disconnected dying nerves. Pressed against me, it smelled like a mix of between putrid barbecue and a tragic house fire where not everyone made it out in time. Gradually, its body grew still, and fetid fluid spilled onto me from its horrific maw in one final insult. I was screaming. I was crying. Bobby ran up and pulled its limp arm, trying to free me, and eventually he succeeded. He held pressure on my arm while I winced and shoved gauze into the laceration. We spent only enough time to stop the bleeding before we quickly returned to our escape. Bobby drove while I attempted to radio comms. Communication, I started, my voice wary. Ambulance 13. 13? The div sub chirped back before the comms could respond. Where have you been? Do you have cell reception? Affirmative. Sighed. Almost immediately, my phone sprung to life. Where the hell have you been? The div sub scolded. We lost all communications. There was... I paused, thinking how I could possibly explain the evening. An accident? I'm hurt. He was quiet for a moment as he contemplated what I said. How bad? Well, it's not great. Can you triage patients? Yeah, I could probably do that. What's going on? The fire jumped the line. There's a whole crew unaccounted for. Before we lost comms, they were saying something about some crazy man lighting the trees on fire. Tall son of a bitch running on all fours.
When did you start writing and why?
I started writing years ago in a dream journal to help with my declining mental health at the time.
What does your writing process look like?
Oh boy, you know that meme of Charlie Day and Pepe Sylvia? It's a lot like that.
What inspired this piece?
I was attacked by a boar on a wildfire. I'd never encountered a wild pig before, so I was scared for my life and clueless what the hell was attacking me. In real life, we slapped a Band-Aid on me and moved the rig up the road where we could see better in case more wildlife tried to escape our way.
Why horror?
I like things with teeth.
As a woman, what makes you angry, and how does that influence your work?
I'm angry about many things, but my stories are just exaggerated personal experiences. There are parallels in the life I lead, but I'm more interested in simply telling the story. Whatever is taken from that is up to the interpretation of the reader.
I don't remember most of my life. I get it. A lot of people my age say that, but I'm not joking. For most of my life, I only remember the events and not how old I was. The events blurred together. Each day of my life was borderline identical. Sometimes I imagine the stuff I can remember taking place when I'm 8, but I'll remember after that I was 15. I'm 24 now, and it's gotten easier, current memories-wise. But the past still is just... it's warped, simply put. Writing about it helps. That's what my therapist says. I'm not sure who would see this, but it just feels good to discuss. For most of my memories, there is a constant. I lived with just my father. It's hard to describe just how ashamed I was of him. I find it extremely difficult to describe what I felt during my upbringing. I've been told that the stories of my childhood are sickening, but they were normal for me. If you ask me now how I feel about the various forms of abuse I experienced through my father, I would say it heavily traumatized me, but I wouldn't say it made me sad. My father was a monster, but we were so isolated. It was such a constant part of my life that it became mundane. I know how it sounds to say that, but it's the truth. All we had was each other. Darker memories I find even harder to recall. Some things I believe should remain unsaid. The passing of my mother deeply troubled my father. He always had mental problems, I later learned. It's not an excuse, nothing could excuse him, but he loved me, and part of me wishes he were alive. Some memories are vivid, some I can only remember little details about. I'd asked him to watch a pot of boiling water while I changed the laundry. He had stuck his finger in the pot and burnt himself. I only remember how the laundry machines had chipped corners and the sounds of being pushed against it over and over, and that I had bruises on my arm and thighs. I remember the next day waking up in the morning and coming downstairs to hear his sobbing. He hadn't slept. His whole face streamed down in tears, his breath ragged as he fell off the couch and crawled to the foot of the stairs. His mouth blubbered as he told me that he was going to be better and that he would make me breakfast. I didn't know what to do, so I just nodded and walked backwards, hitting the crumbling wall. I didn't come downstairs until I heard a thump. He left the stove on, and again he was on the couch, mumbling while dipping his fingers in a jar of tomato sauce. His cheeks were red, and the sound of him sucking at his fingers would have made me vomit if I had any food in me. I grabbed my coat, my backpack, and left. It was still dark outside, but I didn't want to be home. I think I was 14 here, but this might have been one of our last days together. I lived with him until I was almost 17. Our house... I can't remember when it started. We always lived in a poor area, in a small, barely 2-story house on a block full of them. But I wasn't familiar with handiwork, and since it wasn't inside, when our porch started to fall apart, we let it. And when the chimney fell apart, we let it. You can imagine how years of that would make the house look. It's not like I had any friends who would see the house, and the neighbors just saw 2 people who couldn't afford to fix it. The wood under our carpet flooring had started to rot near the end, which made the smell unbearable to outsiders. My father and I both reeked, no matter how much we showered. The stench clung to us. I suppose that's all the context needed, really. I lived in a troubled area as a troubled child. So I suppose the next step of the writing process would be to explain why that is. The simple answer is that I killed my father. The night I did, it was 2 months, give or take, from my 17th birthday. I was 5'4" and weighed 81 pounds. The circumstances of his death were clear enough to the police and medical examiners. After extreme amounts of multiple forms of abuse, in an act of self-defense, I killed my father. I stabbed my father in our kitchen. And after years of rehabilitation and thousands of dollars, thanks to the guilt of my grandparents, I'm functioning. I'm never going to be normal, but I can function. I've had sex. I have a cat. I'm working to become an accountant, something I find a decent amount of comfort in. My current job is just as a janitor while I get my CPA, but it pays fine. My apartment is small, but I like it. I have 4 friends so far, which is an achievement. They don't know the full story, just the very basics. And my father was abusive, and I haven't seen him in 7 years.
My life is okay at the moment. Obviously, my upbringing is never going to be something I can forget, and that is very painful. I'll never have children. I'm repulsed by the idea anyway. I can't stand anything to do with eggs, tomatoes, or pasta, and I'm an orphan. My father's death is something that still keeps me staring at the ceiling at night, both confused and grateful. The truth of the matter is I didn't kill him, I think. I don't remember killing him. My therapist said I had a mental break, that his rot had festered in me until I snapped. I was never charged with murder. I guess all people saw was a malnourished teenage victim. I know my memories are warped, but I know what I saw, and what I heard, and what it did to him. So I guess I'm just trying to make sense of it all. Nobody has or will believe me, but I swear that something else was in the house. Something else had become my father. I was awake and downstairs at 6:13 according to the stovetop, so I got to work that morning. The bathroom was almost as disgusting as the rest of the house. I tried to keep it as clean as I could, but there was only so much I could do. The wallpaper had peeled back, the walls molded in the corners, and the tiles on the floor were always wet. Sometimes my father would leave the towel on the ground, letting it soak. I'd placed it over the shower curtain when I brushed his teeth last night. I found that if I didn't do it, he wouldn't either. The taste after a few days would have been unbearable, so over the years it became a habit of dragging him into the bathroom and cleaning him. My dad had agoraphobia, so public spaces and crowds and anywhere that wasn't the first floor of our house made him scared. Terrified is a better word. It started with just being scared of the doctor, and then the grocery store. He didn't want to get sick. He used to have a routine at noon of waking up and walking down our block, which had become the only place he was comfortable in, shoveling snow when the winter came. He stopped because the neighbors weren't comfortable with him, what he'd say, the smell of alcohol and whatnot. I'd come home from school to see him sitting on the porch without a winter coat and watching the road. And then one day he told me he wasn't getting paid for his work, so he quit. Then he'd just stay on the couch, watching. It got so bad that by the end he became terrified of going up the stairs. He didn't like that I slept up there. He thought I would try and leave him. He could only manage to go upstairs once every few days if he was incredibly drunk. I'm only grateful that we had his disability check after he quit his job to keep us alive. He didn't allow me to work for similar reasons as to why he wanted me to sleep downstairs with him. I grabbed the hallway chair to keep the door closed as I showered. My dad and I both used the same Irish Spring 3-in-1, made my hair tangled and I never felt clean, but it was what my father insisted. My hairbrush, kept together with duct tape, ravaged through my brown hair, pulling clumps out. I didn't stop until my hair felt somewhat straight. I didn't shave. We had one razor, heavily used by my father. I felt repulsion towards it in the past, but at that point I just ignored it. I heard a rattle on the door before a loud groan, and I knew my father was awake, earlier than normal. I got out of the shower and soaked myself with the damp towel. I pulled it through the laundry as much as I could, but it was disgusting regardless. The mirror was dirty, but uncracked. My acne covered most of the left side of my face and my forehead, pus-filled and with smears of orange tomato stains. Another stain pressed sloppily over the left side of my lips, which streaked onto the bruises of my neck. Over top the purple and yellow blemishes was his stain. The bruises didn't stop in my neck. They continued all the way until my inner thighs, and above it all, I could see orange streaks over my skin, in between folds and over top of bones. I was thin. As previously mentioned, I'd weighed 81 pounds, standing at 5'4". My thinness was disturbing. My legs and arms had no excess weight on them. My breasts were tiny, hardly there, and my hips were narrow. I looked younger than I should have. Dirtier. My black hoodie covered it all, and mixed with my dirty loose jeans, most of my skin was out of sight. I washed my hands, grabbing a bit more of the 3-in-1 before I turned off the light and stepped outside. The television was on low volume, but I heard the Full House characters speaking. I walked towards the floor, careful not to step over the creaking planks, before moving to the stove, seeing the clock. 6:24. "Should I grow my hair out?" my father called out, pointing at Uncle Joey. He was in his mid-40s now, but looked closer to his 60s. What had started out as a small bulge had grown into a large beer belly. His loose and stained blue polo shirt didn't cover all of it, and his similarly stained sweatpants were tense against his thick legs. His bare feet rested on the coffee table. The couch looked like it was crumpling inwards, both ends almost lifting off the ground under the long imprinted weight of my father. But his face and hands were the worst. I felt my breathing stiffen, seeing how much orange wrapped around his lips and teeth. The taste of tomatoes always remained with him. I can still remember the wet wisps of breathing in my ear. His hands, shaggy beard, and what was below his belly was all stained with orange remnants of sauce. "Maybe," I said, before moving to the fridge. I grabbed 3 eggs, 2 for him and 1 for me. The rusty knife lay above the refrigerator. I looked away from it. I didn't want my dad finding it. I'd found it at the back of the sink sometime prior. Before my mom had died, I guess one of us forgot about it back there. The knife was a reminder to me that I could be dead. My father hadn't opened the fridge for himself in years, so he hadn't found it yet. Suppose it was a lifeline. Something my father didn't know. "I told you, Carter. We can use more," my father said, with a bit of bite in his tone. His brown eyes met mine, and I gulped. He didn't want me to eat more. He had been drinking more and more cans of tomato soup during lunch as his hunger grew, but I could control breakfast and dinner. Our last big fight had resulted in my threatening to make him go outside and get the groceries himself. He wailed and sobbed and banged at my door for me to stay. Maybe I was 9 when he moved completely indoors, but I could have been older, or younger. "Daddy, we only get 12 in a carton. If we use more, then the eggs won't last as long." My dad never commented on how wrong my voice sounded. I think part of him liked it. Even now, my voice is developing. It was wrong back then. My voice had the same tone expected of a child, but hoarse and wiry and underused. My words always sounded out of breath and whiny. Around my father, I spoke quietly. I didn't know how to speak to others, but my voice disturbed them. He considered my explanation before grunting back at me, turning up the volume. I turned on the stovetop, setting the heat to 5 before taking out the pan. No matter how often I cleaned it, the rust remained. Gave all our breakfast meals a coppery taste. I left it on the stovetop before softly stepping to the couch, standing on the farthest left-hand side. We had seen this episode before. It was the one where DJ didn't eat for several days. Her family was concerned about the possibility of her developing an eating disorder, but my father laughed at her passing out. "It wouldn't kill her, would it? Dropping some, that is. You're nice and skinny." I never got why he wanted me that then. I'd walked over to the stove, a bit of butter sizzling in the pan. I used a bit of toilet paper from the roll in the kitchen over my finger to spread it out before I cracked my egg, watching it spread over the pan. In the egg bowl, as deemed by my father, or the singular mixing bowl we kept in the house, I cracked the other 2 and mixed them together with my fingers. We didn't have utensils. "I asked you a question, Carter," he said, though he didn't press pause. My head turned to see that bitter glare directed at me. I'm sure you could imagine how petrified I was at him. "Yes, Daddy," while nodding seemed to please him as he tugged at his shirt. I swore back then that we were in a sitcom sometimes, that every vile trauma that happened in that house was part of some sick Truman Show dynamic. As I tipped my egg onto my plate, I poured his eggs into the pan next. I put the plate on the dining room table and set my napkin beside it. It was a foldable gray table that the couple 4 houses down had given me once. They said that kids used to borrow it for lemonade stands. But my father and I had used it for our family meals. That had been a hassle, convincing him to move off the couch. But all it took was pointing out that none of the families on television ate on the couch. He liked family dinner anyways, as he got crumbs off where he slept. The laugh tracks that would come off the television were loud. I could vaguely hear the dialogue, but I could always hear the dozens of people laughing during any random quip, mixed with the awe and ooh sound effects ever present during that time. I always felt like people were watching us. His omelet hit his plate with a splat before I set the pan in the sink. I turned the oven off with a click. In households like ours, you could imagine the endless amounts of dirty dishes. My father had fixed that problem by tossing them onto the road in a fit of rage after my mother died many years prior to this day. The forks and knives and spoons went with them, and he never allowed me money for more. So we ate off the same 2 plates, drank from the same glass, and poured the tomato soup and pasta into the same 2 bowls. I looked up to see my father staring up, then down at me. "Your hair's down," he said. I drifted to the table, setting my plate down. He preferred it up. He enjoyed seeing me without my bangs. The couch seemed to gasp as my father stood up, limping over to join me. I felt a little sick, as I always did when I grabbed the jar of tomato sauce, cold to the touch, and set it down. We weren't a religious family, so we set it in. He slathered his omelet with tomato sauce and gave me a wet smile. His hands dug around the rim of the orange jar. It wasn't long before he shoveled the thing down his throat. I ate in a similar piggish manner. It was easier to keep my food down the less time it was in my mouth. I sat at the table until he finished before grabbing his plate and mine and moving to the sink. I'd begged him to let us purchase dish soap, and after a lot of stuff to earn, all I can remember was that I was happy to eat off the plates that no longer had dry splotches of tomato. Beginning to wash the dishes, I heard my father get up, but he wasn't walking to the couch. I remember trying to quicken the pace, but I didn't finish before one of his hands found its place on my shoulder. My legs tightened as I continued washing the dishes. His face leaned against my shoulder, and his breath was foul. I spoke before I meant to. I spoke before he could move his other hand. "I told you to brush your teeth after breakfast. I don't like the taste." My father removed his hand as he grumbled, slumping over to the bathroom with his mismatched limp. I let out a shaky breath as I urgently finished, not bothering to dry the dishes as I saw him standing in the hallway. His hands were dry, but he flashed a smile anyhow. I imagined him smearing what little was left on the toothpaste into his mouth, moving it around with his tongue. "Come here, Carter." I listened. His hand came to my cheek, his thumb stroking at the bumps on my face. His other rested on his belt buckle. The buckle gave a click as it came loose. "Give Daddy a kiss before you go," he muttered. I didn't know it would be the last time I ever had to. He released me after he deemed it satisfactory with a shove and watched me like a hound. I walked to the door, put on my winter coat, tied up my winter boots, strapped my bag over my shoulders, and walked out the door. I breathed in that frosty autumn air as though I was smothered, even though my neighborhood smelled bad. Washing dishes after every meal kept my hands and the dishes clean, but I still licked my hands to wipe my face. I began walking off the porch when I heard the television volume go up. Since I left for school nearly 2 hours before it started, the walk was always cold. I shoved my hands into the pocket of my coats for warmth. Winter coats were expensive, but thrift stores, real thrift stores that still sold for cheap, had a modest selection of them. It cost $35. I'm not proud of how I got the money. I had stolen it, but my classmate was rich and I was 13. I never got caught, but I never repaid her. I made sure to pull out the bottles of deodorant and perfume before spraying them over my body. I didn't really understand hygiene, so I'm aware as to why I stunk, regardless. School was only a few blocks away, so I arrived there quickly. I'm not going to mention where I went to school or where I lived. Somewhere in Canada is all I'll say, but it was winter in October, the snow landing on my nose and hair sticking to it. Winter is pretty the first week, but if you've ever lived through Canadian cold winters, you'll know how miserable it was. The sky was dark, cloudy, and freezing. The wind brushed against my face and I recoiled. I heard it distantly then, behind me, clicking. Like a camera, like a buckle. I turned to look across the street, but I saw nothing there. I heard clicking again, but there were no footprints. I began to cautiously walk towards the sidewalk when I heard my name being called. That completely took my attention, and I ran to the school doors when I saw one of the janitors. David was nice to me. I had met him in second year when he began to let me into the school early. "Hi, David," I mumbled, giving him a shaky wave. He smiled at me. He was a brown man in his 30s, wearing his custodial uniform. He had a pretty wife who was trying to go back to school for nursing. David never pushed our hellos past that, though. Maybe because it'd be weird if anyone knew a mid-30s man let in a teenage girl 2 hours before school started. It was a secret I was happy to keep. "Hello, Carter. Stay out of trouble." He always told me that. As I walked in, I could see his nose wrinkle from my smell. The night the police came to my house, he was one of the endless amounts of people there. Apparently, he had vomited when he smelt the inside of the house, along with most others. I walked to the hallway on the second floor. Most teachers didn't come up here until the school opened, and I never listened to their instructions to leave. I opened my backpack and pulled my binder out. I guess math was an easy way to disillusion myself. Biology brings up genetics, and the sinking feeling of that unspoken what if was something I despised to think about. English was boring to me, and I had no energy to fix my citations or remove unneeded commas. Math was easy. There is an answer if you did it correctly and formulas to get it. I completed my math worksheet before revising my English assignment. My house didn't have the internet, much less a laptop or a computer, so with very little convincing, my English teacher had agreed to let me handwrite all my stuff. My French teacher had been more aggressive, but she allowed me to as well. I would always get lead marks on my hands. I got the occasional little joke directed at me for being poor, as if I didn't know that. My hand was cramped by the time I had to go to my first classes. Chemistry and French were first. I honestly wish I could remember the lessons, but I don't. English was next, and as I took my seat, Felicity locked her eyes on me. She took the seat next to me, bringing the herd of her friends with her. I had gone to school with Felicity since I was in kindergarten, so I was long used to her. She poked at my pimply cheeks with a pearly white smirk. I told you how much prettier you'd be with Accutane. Maybe shower now and then, and your face would clear right out. Felicity was pretty, with reddish-brown hair and green eyes. Her makeup was bad, and looking back at it now, her foundation didn't match her skin, and her eyebrows were drawn as thick as mine. But back then, I thought that she was this impossible thing to look up to. I should have despised her. She had dumped dirty water on me, stolen my hoodie during gym, and came up with all sorts of rumors. It didn't start at the extreme, but after a decade of constant harassment, makes you rather comfortable pushing the limits. I hope Felicity has improved, but few people do. Her friend snickered, and I imagined I was in an episode of Full House. I didn't get any lines, but the laughs faded into the sampled laugh track, which made my feelings hurt less. Hello, she dragged. What's with the coat? No one wants to smell your fucking BO. All of it was correct. I did stink, I was ugly, and I felt like I deserved it. I could hear her clicking her tongue. I bet you like it when he fucks you, I could imagine her saying. None of what she did would ever compare to how I imagined she'd react if she knew. Those unstained teeth would curl, she'd scream bloody murder, and I'd be the talk of some group chat. That would spread, and soon enough everyone would know. So I kept my mouth shut and ignored the next 5 minutes of poking at my hair and quips until they all moved to the other side of the class to get away from me. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I sought to go home today, and I knew it would be worse there. Father had been staring at me with the same look he got when I slept in my room for too many days in a row. I tried to pay attention in English, passing my finished paper to the boy sitting next to me, who passed it down, and so on. I mainly just looked at my hands for the rest of class. I picked at the hangnails and stared at the color. The lunch bell rang, and the quietest rumble from my stomach reminded me of my constant hunger. Every day, I ate one sunny side-up egg and a bowl of pasta with tomato sauce for dinner, and on Sundays, I got a piece of buttered rye. Once in a while, if my dad drank heavily the night before, I could steal a piece of bread early and shove it into my bag for lunch. But I moved to where my math classroom would be, sat in my spot in the back right corner, and watched the outdoors. I didn't have canteen money, so I learned to ignore the churns of my concave stomach begging for my body to be fed. Every lunch, a few cars drove past the street, the snow fell, people ran outside, and occasionally I could see a rabbit. It was one of those days. I smiled as I saw the large thing bounce around the parking lot, its snowy fur unstained by anything impure. Carter, could I have a word? I turned and, on instinct, kept my head low. I walked until I arrived at Miss Howard's desk. She was an older woman and stern. She was one of the few teachers that very few students liked, but she let me sit in her room during lunch. She didn't know how much that meant to me, to have a quiet hour. I've asked you this year, I've asked you the year before, and I'm going to ask you again. Join the honors classes. You aren't pushing yourself in my class. I'd love to see what you can do when you aren't just coasting by. Honors cost extra, was all I mumbled before standing at her desk for half a minute, unmoving. It was always enough to make me slouch back to my desk, seeing the sheer shock and, in this case, disgust at my voice. My throat felt raw when I wasn't speaking to my father. My words clung to my throat, begging not to be heard. The rest of lunch and all throughout math, Miss Howard looked at me, and I guess I just mostly nodded. I don't know why I spoke that day. She clung close to my desk near the end. I think she was going to try and ask me anything, so I made sure to leave class early. I put on my backpack and walked out. I didn't trust her. My dad was sick.
I had thought about running away, but I didn't know my grandparents. I didn't have any friends. No car, no license, no money for a bus, and guilt. Overwhelming plagues of guilt would wash over me for imagining a life where he didn't cling to me. He raised me by himself, and I didn't appreciate how hard that must have been. Obviously, I don't feel that way now, but I stumbled to the outside of the school and sobbed into the cold. I wanted to go. I wanted to be anybody else so that I could go. But how could I leave him? He would starve to death without me. He wouldn't leave the house even if I were dying right outside. I knew that. His agoraphobia crippled us both to the house. I cried until I heard a clicking noise. At first, I thought it was a camera, but I saw nothing there. Nobody was looking down at me. I did see a furry white body. The rabbit I had seen at lunch had been dropped several meters away from me. I thought I had imagined it, but when I wiped my eyes, it was still there. Its leg twitched. I stumbled towards it. I guess the best way I can describe it is that it had been sucked. Like if a suction cup had been pressed to its belly and its little bones and its organs had been drained cleanly. I heard the clicking again. On the edge of the road, it looked like a rabbit, but it wasn't. It had legs, 4 of them, furry white nubs, and one of them was long and shaggy like a spider's or dog's legs. Though I think I only associate that thing with dogs because it had a snout like one. And teeth, sharp, bloody teeth. The thing had bright and bulging reptilian eyes and big, fluffy white ears. It blinked at me, sticking out a long, thick tongue that oozed red blood. I pissed myself. Not an uncommon thing for me then. I had never done it at school before, and I ran. I'm not sure what scared me more back then. The wordless eye contact with that thing while warm piss came down my leg, or the fact that someone could have seen. Normal 16-year-olds don't piss their pants. It was cold because of the winter, so it dried against my skin. An uncomfortable dampness stayed in my jeans. I ran to a bench on the other side of the school, curling into a ball in the snowy seat. I whimpered when my head tilted out, and its head mirrored mine. I held my breath as its legs, even the rabbit ones, dragged to the body and past it. I know now that I had to imagine it, but I could still remember it slurping. I don't know if it was the body or the puddle against the cement, but I stayed in that spot, reeking of piss for hours. Even as people left the school, followed by cars and buses, I stayed. My hands were raw and numb, blue and red, when I stumbled out of my spot and onto the ground. The snow felt like hands groping at me to stay on the ground. Do not go home. It didn't matter, I thought. I was too late to get home on time. I could imagine how my father would be sitting. I'd get the belt. I know it. It was a slow trudge back to the house. What had been a brief walk on the way to school in the morning had turned into a slow, grueling hike. My eyes stayed wide. My whole walk was drenched in paranoia. I thought the creature would jump out at me, tracking my scent. I guess it did, because the closer I got to my house, the louder the slurping became. It echoed in my ears and my head throbbed. I made a decision that I think saved my life. Instead of rushing to the door, I tiptoed to the window. It was there I saw the television on, but my father wasn't on the couch. That's when I heard him. Carter! 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 Over and over. Even when I saw him die, I heard him screaming my name. The world came to a slow-motion scene. I turned my head to see the kitchen, and he was on the floor. My father laid on his back, his shirt in tatters, as that thing wrapped its mouth over his stomach and sucked at him. It was one of those things no one could look away from. It was like a leech. His fingers clawed at the stained shag carpet, each movement sounding like banging against my skull. His eyes were bloodshot and wide, his mouth looked gummy, I couldn't see his teeth. With every wet slosh, I could see him getting broken. His legs seemed to look like putty, and his belly was slowly turning thin and flat. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. We watched each other through the window. He was begging me to help him. The creature didn't look like a bunny anymore. Its furry nubs now had my father's fat fingers, but with spindly long strands of black fur. Its mouth looked like a blender, with molars and buck teeth forming at its mouth as it continued to consume. I could see it, a thumping red heart becoming pressed against its bony black body. Then I could see more indents of organs before skin started bubbling on top. My father had died when I looked back at his face, stuck in a frame of horror. It was mimicking my father once it stood up, but it was wrong, so wrong. It was naked. Its legs were stumpy and not fully formed. One bent halfway around the thigh and dragged behind the other, mirroring my father's limp. Its head was thicker on one side, giving it a permanent lean to the right. It was misshapen, looking like a fat pear with thick, red-stained cheeks. Its mouth had too many teeth in the wrong places, and looked like glue had been smeared all over it. In its stomach, when the creature stood up, I heard it slosh. But none of that compared to the orange stains that formed over the creature. Its puggish brown eyes weren't white, they were orange. I could imagine that the red dripping from its mouth was tomato sauce instead of blood, and when its taloned fingers with crusted orange droppings picked up the limp, empty body of my father, it gripped him and pushed it into his mouth. It gagged. I could almost see the orange streaks leaving its eyes, but it took what little was left of my father and swallowed it. Then it turned to me. Its skin formed around its belly before it unbuckled a strand of it. It stumbled drunkenly on the ground, staring at me with what I could only describe as hunger. It wanted me inside. I don't know why I listened. It was like a flinch. I was outside, I should have run. I don't know where, but I should have run away. But another, despicable part of me saw this bumbling creature and how weak it looked, how it had swallowed and consumed my father. I try not to think of the darker memories and thoughts, but I can still remember the shiver that wrapped over me. I don't know what had clicked in my mind at that moment. A vileness. Maybe it was the wind. I felt my face shift into displeasure and disgust as I turned to face it. It mewed like a baby for me to come inside. Even its cries cracked like a belt. My legs moved stoically. By the time I reached the door and opened it, the beast was perfectly him. It was my father, belt in hand, panting in anger. Wasn't standing, instead on its hands and knees like a dog, a feral one from how much spit was spewing from his mouth. I could hear wet clicking when it tried to speak. I saw bottles and bottles of beer littered around the kitchen and table. Carter. Where Carter? I stepped inside the house and shut the door. It was so cold. It tried moving towards me, but it staggered like my father did when drunk. It landed on its bare belly as its orange-stained fingers held the belt in one hand and dragged itself closer to me on the other. "You aren't going to use that, Daddy," I said, more to myself than the thing. It was a foul, stinking, rotten thing, but it wasn't familiar in this form. It wobbled like toddlers do when they try running and standing. I could see the shock on its face when I walked past it, and the agony as it tried to turn to me. Where? Carter. It groaned. Its head tilted, and I saw a sick, orange, sopping smile. It's wet. It gargled, clicking in laughter. "I'm going to kill you and leave you outside," I mumbled. I watched and saw at the mention of the outside how its tears started pouring. It screeched my name when I moved to the fridge. I would have never used it to hurt my father, but that wasn't my father, so I took the rusty knife from the top of the fridge and walked until I was kneeling a few feet away. It screeched and stomped on the floor, but when it touched my leg, I stabbed its hand to the floor. It wailed in agony, trying to pull away. The knife had gone through the center of its hand, but the tug it gave cut the hand in two leaning pieces. One had a fat thumb and index finger, and the other had 3 stained others. Both sides were limp and loose in the air as it screamed. "Bitch! Baby, no, 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 no," it kept repeating, and I got sick of it. Its fat, squishy head remained in a frozen face of terror as the knife drove through it. Maybe it was the rust. Maybe it was because it had taken everything that was inside my father, but it didn't bleed. Wet, boiling splatters of tomato sauce covered the walls. It covered my face, and I stabbed it over and over and over and over before tossing the knife and beating it with my little hands. I didn't stop until it stopped squishing. I heard banging on the door, but I didn't think about it. I just dug my fists until they became as stained as my father's. And when I took a breath and looked up, the creature's legs had stopped twitching. I heard sirens, but I didn't know they were for me.
As strange as that may sound, I obviously was thinking elsewhere. The moment I turned, a fat hand rolled onto my leg. Clicking and sloshing and pounding came into my ears. I heard wet breathing, and the creature roared. I felt a sucking on my leg, and I howled. Its fingers rolled into my hair and pulled me back, stretching my neck, my chin. I felt sauce and pus resting on my face. My brown eyes met its own, my head pulled so far back that I was curved. My skin felt wet and loose where its mouth ravaged. I. It just kept repeating itself. I didn't know how I heard it stutter. Its mouth was on my leg, but I did. It didn't have a lot of face left. I had taken care of that. But it wasn't gone. Its rows of blunted, crushed teeth tried mauling at my leg, but its gummy suck didn't hurt me. And if the head wouldn't work, then the belly would. I smacked it with all the force I had, and more gore came on me. And then it stopped. I took a moment to breathe before my door was broken down and a police officer came. Half a dozen did. The first thing I heard as I held my father's limp body in my shaking hands was the sound of bile. It was fitting that the television, which had been blaring in the background during the entire exchange, fired the sampled laugh track right then. We were a small town, so a large crowd had formed outside my decrepit house. And I had never felt that many eyes on me as I did when I was taken out of the house. The police officers who came inside couldn't stay inside. The first one who saw me, covered in blood and spit, not sauce, had thrown up with a sniff of his nose. It took the fourth officer to coax me out of the house. I went into the ambulance. I thought they were going to arrest me, but my neighbor had called about my father, how he screamed about disobedience. I'm sure it was quite a shock to see a severely malnourished teenager freshly finished beating him to death. I was charged. Between the medical examination of my body, showing the severe results of my abuse, and the testimony showing my mental instability and my father's autopsy, I was deemed the victim. They only found one body, so my claims of a monster simply rang as childish. My voice, appearance, and experience made it obvious, I suppose, that I was in the wrong state of mind when the act occurred. Teachers and kids from school and neighbors all either brought cards or flowers or chocolates during my stay at the hospital. I didn't care. I was happy to sleep somewhere clean. I was happy that after months of it, the house's marks on me were gone. I smelt clean. Testimonies came by the dozens. People who saw the signs. I was sent off to a rehabilitation center, which I obviously won't name, paid for by my grandparents. I met a few people there, not friends, but people like me. They'd ask me in hushed whispers what made me kill him. I thought that living in that place was nice. They teach a lot about coping mechanisms and try to help me sort my mind. I was diagnosed with half a dozen different disorders. I learned that my stomach, uterus, heart, muscles, and bones were all basically worthless, which led to me not really being able to go out and live. I guess they thought I would be well adjusted in a home for the rest of my life. I don't need to explain why the idea repulsed me. I don't care if I die at 50. I don't want to waste away indoors. I stayed there for 2 years before getting my GED. Then I went to college. That helped me more than rehabilitation, I think. I got to meet other people my age, speak with them, and I didn't have to worry about debt because my mother's side of the family was eager to see me succeed. I think that's just guilt, but I'm not complaining. I'm relatively fine. My name was changed in the police reports to Jane Doe in reference to my father's death for privacy's sake. I haven't worried about it getting out. I only know that because I saw a young woman on YouTube who made a video about it. She wanted to know the truth of the story. I considered trying to message her to try and take down the video. I don't know anymore. It makes so much sense in my head. I get how it sounds. I snapped. I was walking the edge of my sanity for so long that when it broke, I'm not sure. I know I heard the clicking throughout the day. I know I saw that dead rabbit. But I don't think I could have imagined what that thing did to my father. I guess this helped, but I don't think I'll ever be fixed, not really. I can still hear it. When my brain goes blank, and when I think I can spend a day without thinking of it, I hear a wet clicking noise right behind me. The only person in the world who could understand what it was like to live in that house was my father. But even now, years later, some nights I'll still stand in my shower, mercilessly scrubbing at orange stains.
I'm just wondering, when did you start writing and why?
So I think the first thing, I guess I don't know if you can call it writing, but I made my dad type at a computer while I spoke because I wanted to share a story for show and tell in like grade 2. And that was the first thing I had ever written, and it was a horror story. Um, and I really love the feeling of getting to create a character and a world and an environment. So I've been writing on and off for a long time now. Wrote quite a lot of fantasy. I have a lot of story ideas that are just kind of in my mind, like at all times that I constantly think about. But yeah, I've been writing for a long time, and it's just a passion of mine, I guess.
And what does your writing process look like? Are you still dictating, or have you evolved?
No, so what I do, and for this story, I use the Laura Palmer theme as my main musical inspiration, but I normally pick a
Oh, damn
song.
right you do.
No, of course I did. You can see the Laura Palmer influence from this story, obviously, in the events. But I'll sit down in my room. I will put on the same song over and over, and I will just write and write and write until it's done. Tomato Sauce was written in 2 days, and my other story was written in one night. Then I'll normally have somebody edit it because I'm not the best at editing. Um, yeah, it is. I just sort of like to grind it out, and I really like to immerse myself in the story. So it's pretty, yeah, I guess that would be my process. And I just kind of write what I want to write about, you know?
For sure. And you did mention Laura Palmer. I do see similar themes of her sort of character arc in here. But what inspired this piece in particular?
So, Laura Palmer, obviously, if you guys don't know Twin Peaks, Laura Palmer is similar to Carter. She has an abusive relationship with her father in that way. But my main inspiration for this story, and obviously I love my parents, they're great people, none of what happened, but I did kind of grow up in a bit of a dirty home, you could say, and I was pretty heavily looked down upon just from like my environment. You know, we're a very cursive family, not very hygienic. That's just how I was raised, you know. So I was imagining that, and also I drink a lot of tomato soup. I really like tomato soup, and the idea came, well, how could I incorporate this into a horror story? And the story just spiraled and spiraled and spiraled until it became Tomato Sauce. And then a lot of the editing for the story and the monster was inspired by mimics from D&D, where they can like take on the appearance. So I imagined, well, what would in this world, right? Would you really believe that something had come in, taken the form of her father, eaten him, or would you believe that this severely traumatized girl killed him? So that was sort of the thing for that. But I'd say that my biggest inspiration was Laura Palmer and probably the movie Sinister. I love the movie Sinister. Please go watch the movie Sinister. I'm begging you. But yeah, that would be what I'd say is the story.
That's so fascinating because I may never eat tomato soup again. So what attracted you to horror in general? It seems like you have been doing it for your whole life.
I've loved horror. My mom, love you, Rosie. She's a sweetheart. She used to drag me to horror shows. I actually got so traumatized at it that I just, oh, it was terrifying. But horror has always been a very inspirational thing for me because I think that the most like innate emotion that people have is fear. I'm afraid of not too much, I'd say. I'm mainly afraid of rejection or embarrassment, as some people are. So when I write about horror, I like to pick out I like to just make stories about it, and writing horror is obviously like I'm trying to tap into what people are afraid of. And I think at least with Tomato Sauce, the horror doesn't necessarily come from the monster. It's not really prevalent in most of the story. The horror in this story is the fact that she lived in this house for 17 years. Nobody did anything about it. People said that they saw the signs, but she was in that house, stuck there. She was just as stuck as her dad was. She couldn't leave. There was no way for her to go. And I guess that the point of this story, mixing it with horror, was like, I don't know. Yeah, I just love horror, man. It's amazing. It's really good.
Hey, no, I fully agree. I think there are just certain things that are very visceral in your story that are
Yeah,
hard to explain why, but it's a very primal
I tried.
discomfort.
I guess that, especially for this story, I can't believe I forgot to mention, because this guy was a huge inspiration. I love Elias Withrow. I'm sure you guys could pick up a little bit of his influence in my work. But I remember reading the There's Something Wrong with Dad story, or the Bricked story, as so lovingly nicknamed. And I remember just thinking of that being like, well, then grew up in a good house, I would say, but there's definitely some things that were wrong with how I grew up. Nothing anywhere near what Carter had, but just bad stuff. And I thought that this was just a really good way to process it and mixing it with horror. So yeah, Elias Withrow, shout out. Love him.
Dude, shout out to Elias. And for my last question, my dear, as a woman,
Ooh, my dear,
what makes you angry, and how does that influence your work?
Oh, I'm gonna copy the other people. So many things. I'm a very bitter
Do
and hostile person.
it.
But
Yes.
I'm a pretty loud person. I'm a pretty emotional person. I think it's pretty obvious from how I type. A lot of people say I have a lot of energy or character or whatever. And especially when I was growing up, like as a young kid, it was very hard because a lot of the things that would be praised if I was a guy, like the fact that I was loud or that I was a leader, were seen as bad. So it was really hard for me, like growing up, because, there was just so many people who just didn't like me based on who I was. And the fact that like horror and just novels in general, which is something that I love and that for the most part I see most women reading, it's such a male dominated place, especially in horror. And especially in horror, the women get either they're tossed around like sex objects, they're killed in horribly gruesome ways for no reason. I don't really see a lot of justice done to women characters. And I guess that makes me pissed off that so many people will just write these like blank characters and make them women and make them pretty much useless or boring to the plot. And it's just, I want women to be more centric to writing and horror as a genre, is what I would say.
I fully agree, and it's funny that we watched Midsummer for our movie night the other week, because Midsummer is the only horror movie I can remember in recent memory that shows full frontal peen and ball, but not
boot,
it doesn't sexualize the women. Yeah.
It's such a thing in horror movies that you see where it's like the women are, they're naked, they're running away from the killer, they trip, they die, they get horrifically murdered for the crime of being a woman. For most horrors, and even like some of the writing I see, most of the time it's a male protagonist and male dirtagonist, and the female characters are just shunted to the side. They're like props almost. So I'm sort of taking a vow where it's like one of my characters in my stories will always be a woman, will always have central focus. Because there needs to be more of that, I think. Hey, stranger. You'd never believe me if I told you what I long for. I'm sick, abashedly so. They call me sweet, innocent Poppy in real life. I'm the girl people usually look past because she's too normal. Kind, straight-laced, wide-eyed Poppy who would give the clothes off her back to anyone who needed it. Poppy who likes crossword puzzles and occasionally going on vacations because she's been working too much. Poppy who likes to doom scroll through her phone and feels bad for wasting time instead of tending to her garden. Poppy who fantasizes tying up people by their necks, kicking the chairs away, and stepping back to admire the sight. I don't get off to it, but I long for it like someone longs for warm hugs at night. I long to release people from the suffering of this social condemnation. Erin, Iron, pronounced as iron because her parents are quirky and different, is chewing her lip, watching the ads for mate bonds on her phone. A love drug, one would argue, but it was just a cocktail of chemicals that made people horny. Some people also say that it makes you fall in love with the first person you see. People shoot it up like heroin nowadays. What do you think? Should I get it? Her shaking, excited thumb hovers over the buy now button. I lean over to her, scanning the screen like I'm interested. It doesn't matter what I say. Erin always buys it. She has this fear of missing out. It's the latest trend? I ask politely. Everyone's doing it. She almost sounds like she's frothing at the mouth. It's expensive, I point out. Iron's chronically broke, but she always has the new things. From the cups, to the ugly dolls you chain on your bang, to the latest thing to shoot up. She'll always have it. Her thumb touches the large green button. I did it. I ordered it. She announces it like I wasn't watching. She's shaking with excitement from the purchase. Maybe in her mind, people are applauding her for it. The hit of dopamine. You see it, right? What a FOMO whore. Now I'm completely aware of what I sound like to you. A judgmental, hypocritical piece of shit. But at least I'm not like them. A mindless victim to their phones, a slave to social media and shallow, instant gratification. At least I'm aware. If I say those words out loud, I know what I will be called. A pick-me girl. A girl who's not like the other girls, but I don't want to be labeled, so I have to keep my mouth shut. It's easy and entertaining being this fault-finding spectator. When I clock out, Erin's on her phone for a company-mandated therapy session. The suggested schedule is bi-weekly, but I have mine weekly. Why? I guess you can say I have a thing for him, my therapist. No, not in that way. I just find him fascinating. He's not like other men. He understands the social contagion, but does nothing to combat it, much like me. He likes to watch. With the internet the way it is now, you wouldn't know how easy it was for me to find his home address, his 2 kids' names, his wife's, his 1 cat and dog, the bitch he talks to online when his wife is asleep. I know he knows what he's doing. He just can't help himself. Like me, he has this secret longing that the real world can't provide, what his wife can't provide. What do you find hard in building relationships? He asks me, his voice deep and professional. You know why I'll never tell him the truth. I feel like they're always so shallow, so fleeting. I'm scared to put my heart into someone and end up getting hurt. Through the screen, I see him look down onto his lap. What do you think he's doing? My phone vibrates in my pocket, a familiar sound interrupting the silence. Oops. Pretending like I hear nothing, I turn my volume completely down. His eyes shoot up again to the screen, his neck beginning to redden. We've been through this before, right, Poppy? Unless you make an attempt to change, nothing is going to happen. Landon's voice has changed. You can hear that he's a little irritated at me. I know. I'm sorry, doctor. Landon's my therapist IRL, but behind closed doors, when his wife's asleep, he likes to be humiliated, degraded like a filthy, disgusting slut. He knows his bitch knows he's cheating. He knows she doesn't care. You know what he doesn't know? That I'm that bitch. During our session, he's hitting on my DMs, asking when I'm free for a voice chat. Whenever he asks that, I know what he wants, what he longs for. I know it can be incredibly challenging, but this is why I'm here for, Poppy. I know it's a bit of a stretch to say that you can't open up, but... He says a bunch more droning nonsense. I know what's coming next. He's about to tell the time and end the session. Did you know our company pays him handsomely for these 30-minute sessions? Truly, these charlatans are just raking in cash for just listening to people whine. Landon's in a hurry to hop off the call and my phone keeps buzzing. He's calling his bitch right now. I almost smile at this. Once our session ends, I don't answer his call. I let it sit there for a few minutes as I prepare my dinner. I don't do food ordering apps, I cook my own food. That's how people get fat, ordering from those companies that use too much processed ingredients. Mine are homegrown, brought fresh from Eden Juan. With their curated minimalist display shelves and overpriced goods, makes me feel like I'm better than everyone else. Poppy is the kind of person who definitely pays more for organic butter and gluten-free kale smoothies just for the experience. My sparkly, sharp fake nails clack on my kitchen counter. I had my nails done just because I wanted it, not because of the trend, the FOMO. God no, I'm not iron. When my phone rings again, excitement shoots up my spine. Landon's calling again. It's been a while since his first call, so I answer now. What do you want? Did you know he likes it when I mean to him? You haven't been picking up. I'm busy.
The fact that I never changed my voice with Landon is testament enough to how much he doesn't care who he's talking to. I can't do this anymore, Yana. Yana, the bitch's name, my alter ego. My heart drops at this. What the fuck are you talking about? You see it coming, my crash down. It's been fun and all, but I don't know, getting attached. Oh, he continues, sounding resigned. I've told you all about myself, but I never hear the same from you. I feel like this unrequited shit is just a show. It's not, but I'll make him think it is. I'm not sure what you want from me. I want more, Yana, not just this role-playing. I'm not even sure what prompted this. I've been very careful how I speak to him, set boundaries and shit. My face is twitching and my hands turn cold. My mind races, an idea crosses my mind. A very risky one, but brilliant all the same. My heart rate is spiking at my anticipation. What are you willing to do for it, Landon? My voice is low and reedy. God, anything. I'll do anything. Just let me see you. I'll get on a flight. My eyes narrow as my nails pick on non-existent dirt, but honestly, I'm zealous. Embarrassingly so. Shame. You're a bad husband and father. I'm afraid that won't translate well if you're with me. You'll cheat on me too. Leave me too. I swear I won't. He's growing increasingly desperate. I like it. I want to taste it. My hands wrap around my neck, tightening my hold. The rush of blood in my ears is almost deafening. His earlier words ring in the awkward silence. Unless you make an attempt to change, nothing is going to happen. Let me come to you, Landon begs. And you'll do anything? Anything. A wide smile spreads across my lips. I'm dealt a good hand here. I give him an address and add, I'll see you tomorrow here. Don't be late. I've told you already, right? What I long for most? Well, it turns out I'm wrong. What I long for the most is for someone to do it on their own free will just because I say so. It's a control thing. Oh, what a rush. So when the time comes, he knocks on our booked room. I have a surprise ready for him. It's tied by the beam on the ceiling. I made sure it's sturdy enough to hold his weight. To tell you honestly, I'm too excited to think of the consequences, so when I open the door, I'm not prepared for Landon to completely bulldoze me and stab me with the syringe. I'm horrified as I fight against him, watching the pink liquid slowly ooze into my veins like sickly sweet poison. Mate bonds. I panic and squirm. Now that you've seen me act so stupidly, I'll have you know this is the only time I fucked up as badly. Definitely my first time. I kick and scream, but he covers my mouth. His body's pinning me to the floor, his eyes wide and manic. Now you'll do whatever the fuck I want. He sounds victorious. Like he's just conquered Troy. Not this unwilling woman. I shake my head, writhe, twist, but he's all over me. The only thing I can move is my eyes, so I close them, but I hear sounds. Sounds that'll be the death of me. Notifications, one after another, an intoxicating ping, ping, ping that had consumed my entire person. When it stops, I almost cry out. The mate bonds have laid their claim, and it's the endless barrage of notifs. Fuck me. Landon finally recognizes who I am and jumps back, scrambles away from me. Poppy? I withdrew the syringe from my neck and thumbed the wound. Sticky. Doesn't even glide well. I feel it curdle in my veins like a stroke. Surprise! I grit out. Unless you make an attempt to change, nothing's gonna happen. That's what you said, so I took you up on your offer. Landon's a handsome man. Probably a reason why I'd attached myself to him like a tumor. I just really am not used to attention from men who look like him. You don't look like your picture. I can see him wincing and cringing inside. I can hear his disappointment like a wrench in my gut. You idiot, of course I don't look like my picture. For once our roles have reversed and now I was the one being humiliated. Him being quiet was just as worse as me degrading him. I can't take it. I'm so fickle that I can't stand myself. I just want this all to end. And like he had an epiphany, he robotically stands up, turning to leave. He doesn't say a word, not giving me a glance back. I am frantic. Go ahead, you hypocrite. You cheat on your wife, but you can't stand the thought of jerking off to a patient. Pick a struggle, I shriek. Alone in the room, I feel the world cave in. Narrowing into the sounds of my phone, I don't even care about Landon anymore. I just want to snort that line of cocaine that's my notifs. I'm evolved again. Do you know what I long for most now? My eyes find the noose and start the live button on the app. I want my high, and I want it now. As I angled my phone by the noose and tapped start live, I'm brought to another world where I'm becoming undone. I'm heavy as the phantom orgasm hovers close. My skin is tingling and burning like I just brew an abscess. God, I want to rake my skin until they slide off its sloths. My need for it has become absurd, but I don't care. I'm chasing that high. I dress myself with the rope like a necklace and kick off the chair. I hear it. The spamming attention, validation, and hate thrown my way. As I watch myself on the screen writhe with the rope around my neck, I'm coming alive while losing my life. I've never been happier. Rip Poppy, the pick-me girl who committed sewer slide with a smile on her face. This is the filth I long for most.
I have a few questions for you. First of which being, what the fuck? Second being, when did you start writing and why?
Yeah, so way back when I was in high school, I used to write fan fiction.
Real.
No
real.
way. What?
I'm sensing Kitty might have some up here and there. Did you write a lemon back in your day? That's what they used to call lemons.
I used to write alternative universe of Vampire Academy. So yeah,
so
it's
real.
young adult.
So real.
So yeah, that's when I started, and then I just really love reading, and I'm not much of a talker. I don't have a lot of friends, so it's just me over there. Like, I feel like sometimes I'm that pick me girl because, you know, I'm just watching all the time and judging in my head.
I think that's a pretty common occurrence. No need to feel isolated.
It's like an inner woman thing where it's like if you act in a way, you're like, oh my god, am I a pick me girl? It's a shame. I don't think any of us are. I think that you are a great author. That was an amazing story. My goodness. Trotter, any more questions?
Yeah. Yes. What does your writing process look like?
I don't have a process actually. I usually just dream of something really random. Like this one, a trigger warning. It's not a suicidal ideation anymore. It's more like every time I close my eyes, it's just me hanging around.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's what I see when I try to fall asleep. And I thought before that maybe I'm kind of suicidal, but no, not actually. It's just something I see in my head all the time. And yeah, so it becomes a dream, and then I just write it down just to get it off my system.
So these dreams you've been having, is a dream like that sort of what inspired this piece in particular?
Oh yeah, definitely. That is my dream. Exactly my dream, literally.
That's a dream to have for sure. And so these dreams and also that sort of lingering feeling you used to have of, I think it's a pretty common feeling to feel a bit of an outcast, and that's why we sort of gravitate towards horror. But why for you, what is your attraction to horror?
Mainly because the villains are really good looking, and also I have a really weird sense of humor, and I don't know, I can't really find anyone who understands that much, and mainly the horror people are kind of close to that. So, yeah, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I think horror people in the past that I've met are oftentimes more funny than like comedy people, just because our minds are just so in tune with each other sometimes, that it can just, as Pi is saying, we're all fucked. So my last question for you, Kitty, as a woman, what makes you angry, and how does that influence your work?
Okay, so I've been thinking about this question for like how many days now, but I don't really know what the answer is. I'm not easy to anger.
September 1st, 1955, Alderbrook, Oregon. Officer Parker McDermott, badge number 4823. Transcription of the audio file titled Audio Log 1. Officer McDermott reporting on Highway 19, the emptiest road on this side of the state. Nothing but two-way curvy road with desert on both sides. Chief decided this was a clever way to torture me, wasting my nights away alone. A pause in the audio log, a crinkling sound can be heard. At least I get to eat snacks. A tapping sound is heard coming from inside the vehicle, assumed to be Officer Dumont drumming on his steering wheel. I honestly don't see what I did wrong. I'm an officer of the law. I serve and protect the town. If an order is wrong, then I'm not beep, 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 beep. What in the world? Officer McDermott shifts around in his patrol vehicle. Clicking and typing sounds can be heard. The LIDAR just went off. No cars are present on the highway. Must be a malfunction. More typing and the sound of Officer McDermott hitting the LDIRA gun. So this can't be right. This thing just clocked something going 245 miles per hour. It's 1:34 a.m. No one is out here. Tomorrow I need to get this thing fixed. The audio recording cuts off. Let the record show that Officer McDermott does not log with the LDR gun caught. Pause for 2 minutes. Okay, I shouldn't freak out. Technology is weird. Things glitch all the time. Crinkling sounds can be heard again. What can I talk about to calm myself? Oh, I saw this movie trailer on TV today. It's this new action flick with Brad Pitt. It looks pretty cool. He's a detective with Morgan Freeman. They basically have to beep, 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 beep. Silence on the recording. Heavy breathing is heard, followed by typing. Radio static is heard. Officer McDermott to dispatch. Officer McDermott to dispatch. Over. Dispatch to Officer McDermott. What seems to be the problem? Over. My LDAR seems to be acting funny. It keeps clocking super high speeds, but nothing is going by me. Over. Just finished out your shift and we'll get it checked out tomorrow. Over. 10-4. Officer McDermott sits in silence for the remainder of his shift. Again, he does not log the speeds in any sort of database, nor does he file a report of his equipment malfunctioning. September 4th, 1995. Transcription of the audio file titled Audio Log 4. So this morning, I went to the station and got a new LDAR. Nobody really believed me when I said it went off on its own. I know I saw actual speeds. Officer McDermott shits around in his vehicle. I bought a book. It's a Stephen King novel called Gerald's Game. Lady at the bookstore said it was good for a King book. Hopefully that'll distract me. It gets really boring out here. Lonely. Lonely and boring. You know, Officer Koopy told me this story about the road. Some local legend stuff. He was telling me the story of how people would always go missing on this road, late at night too. That this huge spider woman would chase cars down the highway and eat the people inside. I think it's all bullshit. For about 10 minutes, the sound of page turning and breathing is heard, until there is a faint sound of scratching. What the fuck was that? The door opens and McDermott can be heard cocking his gun. Alderbrook Police Department, if anyone is out there, make yourself known. Footsteps are heard. We see McDermott is walking outside the vehicle. After a few seconds of the footsteps, we hear McDermott laughing. It's a tumbleweed. A damn tumbleweed scratching my car. McDermott gets back into his patrol vehicle and slams the door shut. The following is a combination of the audio file and what was typed on his computer. I was so worked up about nothing. Man, I need to stop being so The beeping sound from the night previous is heard. You gotta be kidding me. I just had this thing replaced. 238 miles at 12:24 a.m. Might be a malfunction. Again, we hear the beeps. 245 miles at 12:25 a.m. Alright, this must be a prank. Again, but faster than normal. 267 miles per hour at 12:26 a.m. Let me in, let me in, let me in, let me in. This can't be possible. Nothing is here. Again, it's quicker. 278 miles at 12:27. Help, 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 help. Leave me alone. The beeping has turned into a high-pitched noise. 300, oh God, please help me, fuck! McDermott starts his patrol vehicle and drives away. The high-pitched sound stops right before the audio recording ends with the sound of McDermott sobbing. When asked by Chief DeVries about what the writing was about, Officer McDermott says he doesn't remember typing anything. September 12th, 1995. Transcription of the audio file titled Audio Log 12. I haven't been able to shake this feeling of being watched. Like someone or something is watching me out of view of my peripheral vision. I don't know. Maybe this road is making me crazy. Wouldn't that be something? I hear the turning of pages, assuming that McDermott is leaving. After an hour of silence, a car horn is heard. Sound of the audio recorders moving around takes over the recording. We hear the end of his sentence as he approached the other vehicle. Trouble in the dark, sir. A man's voice, later identified as Charlie Lambers, is heard. Sorry to bother you, officer, but I'm having some engine trouble. What seems to be the issue? Well, looks like my battery died. Do you have jumper cables? I should. Let me pull my car up so we can get you charged up. Officer McDermott proceeds to move his vehicle over to the front of Charlie's car. There, let me go get them. I really appreciate it, officer. So, why are you doing driving this road so late? I'm doing a solo road trip across the country before I go to college. Like my last hoorah before I'm back to work. Sounds like from. Where are you from originally? Oh, I'm from Kansas. Nice. Now, here they are. Wait, Silence for a moment. We hear the sound of an engine running and the wind howling. Hello? Buddy, where'd you go? We hear shuffling noises and the low hum of the vehicle's engines. Hey, if you're trying to pull a fast one on me, it won't work. McDermott draws his weapon and begins scanning the area. I'm still a police officer, so if you're trying to do anything wild, I will. Radio silence. Oh, good lord. McDermott runs back into his patrol vehicle. Officer McDermott on Highway 19, I have a 1054. Please send available units out. Officers Cooper and Miller are responding and en route. We hear muffled sounds of gagging from McDermott. Oh, God, this is so bad. He leaves the vehicle. This is Officer McDermott with the Alderbrook Police Department. Make yourself known. Silence. Make yourself known. Again, silence. After a few seconds, a distant, high-pitched screaming is heard. Alderbrook Police Department, show yourself or I will open fire. Police sirens are heard approaching. Officer Cooper and Officer Miller arrive on scene. Initials will be used in the corresponding conversations. Jesus Christ, McDermott, how the hell did this happen? I don't know. I went to go get jumper cables and I come back and, oh God, I'm gonna call the coroner's offices. It all happened in a second. It was so quick and quiet, I didn't know what to do. You see anyone else with him? God, this is disgusting. No. I literally turned around. We were having a conversation. Coroner office is en route. Thanks, Miller. Now, McDermott, did you at least get the guy's name? No. All I know is he's from Kansas. I thought putting you out here would make you a better cop. But geez, a guy was massacred right in front of you. You don't have to remind me, Miller. I know I let this happen. Shit. The audio log is cut off. The body of Charlie Lambers was pale and looked to be drained of all blood. What was left in his bloodstream seemed to be a mix of his own blood and some sort of paralytic venom. His abdomen was ripped out, but not with precision. It looked adjacent to someone digging into his stomach and pulling it open. The edges of skin were black and coated in a strange saliva-like substance. Most of his organs were missing and or liquefied. When medical examiners tested the liquefied organs, most were a mix of bile, chunks of skin, and some of the strange saliva discovered on the other parts of his body. The officers in this case do not have any suspects, as no one was on scene besides Charlie and Officer McDermott. Officers McDermott LDR went off at 1:25 a.m., clocking something going past at 254 miles per hour. September 16th, 1995. Transcription of the audio file titled Audio File 16 Help, 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 Help. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. This road is playing with me. Even when I'm not out here, it follows me home. In my dreams, I can hear something calling me. This sultry, deep woman's voice calling my name, begging me to join her as she feels so lonely on the road. And every time I follow her out onto the road, I see this thing. A tall, slim, black spider. Half of the body is the woman. Long, slick black hair covering her face, bright, round, white eyes peeking between the strands. She crawls towards me, her jaws open to show fangs and rows of teeth. I always wake up before she can consume me. I don't know if this is my brain fucking with me or something. Has a hold on me? Officer McDermott sits in silence for 10 minutes. Gerald's Game is a pretty fucked up book. I finished reading it earlier today. I should pick something nicer to read when I'm off. Maybe I could pick up a new hobby. My nana says knitting calms the body and mind. We hear a roaring engine and loud speakers as a car rushes past. Beep, 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 beep. 186 miles per hour at 12:39 a.m. Finally, something to do. McDermott activates his lights and sirens and proceeds to chase down the other vehicle. The sirens blare over the audio recording. Another sound is heard, but it's hard to decipher now. It's either tires screeching or a woman's scream. Alderbrook Police Department, pull over, McDermott says over the intercom system. The other vehicle slows to a stop and pulls over. Turn your engine off and put your hands out the door. Please, man, it's right behind us. You gotta let us go. McDermott, radio dispatch. Officer McDermott to dispatch. I have a top possible 10:55. Please stand by. Over. Copy that. Over. McDermott proceeds to exit his patrol vehicle and approach the vehicle. License and registration, please. Please, officer, you have to believe me. This giant creature thing was chasing us down the road. Have you been drinking or consuming any sort of drugs tonight? What? No, man. Look behind us. It's gonna catch up to us. McDermott walks onto the road with his flashlight drawn. There's nothing on the road but you, me, and the sand. So please, license and registration. What? The other gentleman pokes his head out the window. That's not possible, sir. I need to see your license and registration. It was following me. I swear on everything holy, it was following me. Officer McDermott to dispatch. I need to pick up on Highway 19. Suspect is not cooperating and appears to be intoxicated. Over. Dude, I already told you I'm not intoxicated or anything. Then show me your license and registration. Officer Miller en route. Stand by. Over. The suspect showed his license and registration out the window. Very nice. Don't move. McDermott goes back to his vehicle and processes the suspect's information. Screaming can be heard, assumed to be the suspect. Oh, jeez. McDermott steps out from behind the vehicle and approaches. It's coming! Look behind you! The only thing coming is my other officer. Please step out of the vehicle for me. Hell no, not when she's approaching. There is nothing besides another officer. Now step out of the vehicle, please, with your hands behind your head. The suspect slowly opens his car door and shakingly comes out. He stares down the road with wide eyes as observed by McDermott. Now I have some reasons to suspect that you're intoxicated, so I'll need you to perform some field sobriety tests for me. Is that all right? The suspect says nothing, just staring down the road as Officer Miller pulled behind McDermott's vehicles. Initials will be used for this part of the document. The suspect's name was never identified, so the initials HS, highway suspect, will be used. What seems to be the issue here, McDermott? He's not cooperating and he keeps talking about someone following him. She's real. She was there. Sir, what is your name? She's come for every man on the road. Sir, I asked you for your name. Can you tell me your name? The widow. Excuse me? The suspect starts to walk towards them. His eyes are wide, almost uncannily wide. As described by Officer McDermott's later report, Officer Miller draws her weapon. Stop right where you are. She's come for the sons of Adam, sir. Please stop. He comes closer, dropping his arms and screaming. Loud, demonic-like screams come out of the man. If you do not stop, I will shoot. He's coming. She's coming. The man sprints towards them and Officer Miller opens fire. Call dispatch and have them send an ambulance. McDermott, you okay? Yeah. Sorry, I froze. I'm sorry. Just call dispatch. It had to be done. Officer McDermott called the dispatch and ambulances arrive on scene. The man did not have any identifying information on him, and the vehicle was reported owning to an elderly woman who reported it stolen earlier in the day. When doing a toxicology report, no alcohol or drugs were in his system, but a strange substance that came up as inconclusive was. The audio log continues after all the other vehicles leave. He saw her. He died because he saw her. Something is on this road. I have to do something. The audio file ends. September 21st, 1995. Transcription of the audio file titled, No One Can Save Him. So I was able to get a spike strip. Almost caught this thing going past me twice, and I don't plan on letting it get past me tonight. I've attempted to get a camera on with one of my sister's motion-activated cameras, but all I got was a blur, nothing. So this has to work. My nightmares have gotten worse since the incident on the 16th. I hear her voice more frequently, even when I'm not sleeping. I can't shake the feeling that he wants me to find her. Officer McDermott has been showing signs of mental distress more frequently since September 16th. Anytime Chief DeVries suggested he get a psych evaluation, he declined. Chief DeVries even offered to have him reassigned, but again, he declined. Since he has been stationed on Highway 19, he has logged over 50 LIDIRA returns. I just have to be vigilant tonight. No distractions. The audio log is silent for an hour. Beep, 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 beep. Oh shit! 245 miles per hour, 1:20 a.m. McDermott got out of his vehicle and let out a sigh. Shit! Nothing! He gets back into his vehicle and sits in silence for a while. Beeping chirps from the LIDAR. 267 miles per hour, 1:38 a.m. Again? How is nothing happening? McDermott slams his hands on the steering wheel. It's a spike strip. If it can stop cars at high speed, how can it stop this goddamn thing? The beeping followed by a blood-curdling scream. Oh my sweet Jesus. He runs out of the vehicle and runs after what screamed, I got it! Holy shit, I got it! A high-pitched yelping sound is heard as McDermott approaches. Holy shit! McDermott is standing in front of the thing. The audio that follows are the last spoken words of Officer McDermott. It appears to be an animal? I can't tell. It's too big to be anything I've seen before. All black, covered in fur, I don't know. A yelp comes out of the creature. A second voice is heard. I'm hurt. Oh Lord, ma'am. The woman, in front of him screamed, you hurt me. McDermott stayed silent, begins to hyperventilate. All I wanted was for you to join me, Parker. A pause in the audio. It's you. Parker, help me. Well, what are you? I am what you seek, Parker. I'm the thing on the road. We hear the creaking and snapping of limbs, assuming to be the woman, stands before McDermott. Come with me, Parker. Holy, take my hand and come with me. Parker, please? McDermott cocked his gun, and a low growl came from the woman. Don't do that, Parker. I have to. The woman screamed again, distorting the audio file. What we hear next is the screams of Officer McDermott. He's screaming and crying for help and for God. The wet sounds of skin ripped, the low snarls of the woman are heard as she tears into him. His gurgled screams are drowned out by the snapping of his rib cage. The screaming stops, and the rustling of him being picked up causes him to drop the audio recorder. The woman grunts and yelps as she takes Officer McDermott's body. The recording continues for hours until it ultimately cuts out when the storage fills up. Officer McDermott's body was never found. The police investigation is still open. Officer Cooper is now stationed on Highway 19.
Liv, such a wonderful thing to read about goth spider mommy eating men. Always.
Yeah.
My question is, when did you start writing and why?
Well, I kind of started writing when I was like in elementary school because my friends, they all knew I was a nerd and they wanted to be my friends only because I could write. And they were like, oh, you should write stories with all of us in it. And I was like, okay. So it started out as me just writing short stories for my friends with them in it. And then I don't know, I was always a creative person and I liked writing it. Like I wrote screenplays for my schools. I would write a bunch of short stories. During Valentine's Day, guys would pay me to write poems for their girlfriends. Like it was like that kind of shit. Like I love.
My gosh.
I just liked writing a lot.
It's the grind. So what I'm hearing is you were making fan fiction of your friends.
Basically, it was forceful. It was forceful fan fiction because I didn't want to write it, but they were like, please, bro, you're so cool. I was like 10. I didn't know any better. I was like, this is how you make friends, guys. They want you to do things for them.
Is that not how you make friends? What?
I don't know.
What?
Nothing's changed, so I'm assuming that's still how you make friends.
What does your writing process look like now versus it did when you were 10?
Now it's definitely more like legit because I want to make a career out of it. So usually what I do is I like sitting outside and writing. I just like hearing the natural elements as well as just like yapping to those around me. And I'm like, hey, does this sound like a cool idea? No? Okay, great. I'm gonna write it anyway, because that's what I want to do. And I just like crank stuff out, and then I usually edit it like 4 times. Although this one, the widow story, it was kind of like I knew what I wanted to do, and then I just did it. Like this was the easiest so far, I feel like. Writing process wise. And Pioneer, also shout out Pioneer. He helped me come up with this concept because I was like, oh, what's the name for it? What should I name it? And he's like, The Widow.
Ooh.
And then I completely like changed half of the concept of the story because I really liked the name. And then Jade was like, by the
know who
way,
Pioneer is. I don't
sorry,
know who Pioneer
Pionet.
is. Shout out Pionet.
Yeah,
Shout out Pionet.
Shout out Pionet.
Pionet. I was wondering who Pioneer was. I'm quite confused.
I only, me and my homies fucks with Pionet.
Yeah.
Not to glaze or anything, but like he was really helpful. And then also Jade being like, it's ladies' night, and I was like, well, I gotta make her eat men only. So kind of both ideas combined together kind of made this, and I'm pretty proud of it. I'm pretty proud of it.
So would you say
you should be proud of it?
was,
My gosh.
Yeah, you should absolutely be proud of it. It was awesome. Would you say that it was those two who kind of inspired the piece, or how much of it was sort of inspired previous to your fellow writer's intervention?
I think the concept of the Spider Woman was their inspiration. I wanted to do the highway patrol thing. I just had the hardest time figuring out what the monster would be. And I think combining those two things that they said really was like, oh, it all clicked. It all made perfect sense.
Isn't it so awesome when those things sort of just align, when like feedback you're getting sort of
it's
kind
so
of perfectly aligns with what you're already
so
thinking,
great.
and it like, oh, it all clicks into place. There's nothing better.
Oh, it's just you did so good with that story, Liv. It's just you're such a talent.
I'm kicking my feet right now.
You should kick your feet, blushing.
At what point did your writing switch from short stories about your friends to the horrific? What attracted you to horror?
What really attracted me to horror is just that would be like the one thing that me and my friends would do is just sit around and watch horror movies. And all we would really do is just complain about all the wrong decisions they would make. And so about like middle school, I watched the It movie and I was like, I could make this like 10 times better. And so I wrote a short little thing about a couple of middle schoolers solving a murder mystery. And it was just like it really just took off from there because I really liked writing horror things, and horror is so many different aspects. It's not just like blood, gore, blah, blah. It's like a really wide spectrum. It's just things that make people scared and uncomfortable, and it kind of just took off in like middle school, high school, and that's just been my main forte ever since.
100%. I think that's what makes horror so accessible, is because it is one of the only genres that is completely subjective. So everyone is scared of different things. So there's so many different ways you could go, so many different niches, subgenres.
Yeah, that's what I love.
There's something for everyone.
It really was. I'm not really that afraid of like spiders, but I'm being honest. Imagining like a hulking black spider on the like in an abandoned road. My goodness, that's terrifying.
Just absolutely booking it towards you at like Mach 10. Well, you guys are. We're gonna be fine though, because we're all ladies. She don't eat ladies. We're all good.
Yeah, it's only any of the men in here.
Yeah,
if they even
stinky
exist.
Men.
Nothing to fear from us. But for my last question, I have to ask: as a woman, what makes you angry, and how does that influence your work?
Oh, how much time you got? No, I'm just kidding.
We got all night, baby.
A lot of what other people have said is just the fact that it's such a male-dominated place. You just want to I want to put my foot in the door. Like, ever since I was young, it's always like, oh, you can't do that. Boys do that. Like, I always grew up playing sports.
For real.
I was like, oh, you can't play the boys' sport. You have to play the girls' sport. I'm like, it's a sport. It's football. I want to tackle people. Like, let me do my thing. So when I was writing and I was like, oh, it'll be so easy for me to just write a story and get it published and like do my thing. No, I was wrong. Very wrong. It's a lot harder, even though sometimes a lot of the women written stories or female written stories in general, the plots and the concepts just go a bit deeper. Not to shade men, not gonna get y'all wrong. Y'all write good stuff, but yeah, you know, like
Hey, tell it, sister. This is ladies' night. They
This
can't
is ladies'
touch us.
night.
This is ladies' night. Yeah.
Touch us.
But it's just like because we already have that fear of just like existing, and I feel like it makes it so much easier to write things because like I'm scared to go to the grocery store by myself. Might as well write a horror story about a grocery store, and it's just a real life experience. Like, and I just love doing it. Like I love writing. I've always loved writing, and then like I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent, but
no, I've said it once.
We
I've said
love
it 1,000
tangents.
times.
Keep going on them, sister.
We have such a unique relationship to horror, just because we have to be. Not that we have to be, but in general, we are. So we're vulnerable in a way that we shouldn't be. Exactly, Jade. Life is horror for us. Like just a woman being alive is its own horrific sort of. Just the idea of bleeding. How many men do you know have such a low pain tolerance or get squeamish at the sight of blood? And it's something that we deal with like clockwork. It's just.
Yo, Jade is spitting some lyrics right now. You're prey in a world full of predators. My God, put that in a song. Jesus. No, I agree with both of you on this whole. I'm really glad that we did this ladies' night thing because my goodness,
I fuck with it hard. I fuck with this.
We have so many ladies, so many ladies.
Hey, Liv, I fuck with you. How about that?